Good morning once again, and welcome back to the Planet Doug podcast for Thursday, March 13th, 2025. It's actually a bit later in the day than my normal podcasts. I think it's about 12 o'clock, about noon. I just came back from having breakfast or brunch or lunch, whatever you want to call it, at JT Kopitiam, which is right beside my hotel here. I like to go there before the lunch rush, because during the lunch rush, all the tables are taken. I mean, me as one person. I mean, I could still sit down, but I'd have to go up to tables that already had people sitting there and ask them, do you mind if I join you, this sort of thing. But anyway, I prefer to go when it's empty. And lately, I haven't been going first thing in the morning, so I have not been having breakfast. I just sit here in my room, do my Planet Doug things, drink a cup of coffee, and then around 11 o'clock at the latest, I'll zip over there and get my wonton mee. And then they have an economy rice display there. And what I'll often do is get my dinner to go. So if I do want to have another meal that day, then I'll get rice and veggies and whatever from this economy rice display. And then I'll just bring it back to the hotel room, and I'll just leave it here in the room, and I can go out for the rest of the day. And I have dinner waiting for me when I come back, and I really like doing that a lot. And the last time I went there, the guy, he's a very nice guy, the one that runs this place, and to me the food looks amazing, every single dish. I've been going out quite a bit to the Indian restaurants in my neighborhood, because this is largely an Indian neighborhood. But I can't quite get a handle on the meals that I have there. I look at all the things that are on display, all the ingredients, and of course, it's all based on rice, the Chinese food in these economy rice places. It's also based on rice, and that's fine with me. I like rice better than anything. But at these Indian restaurants, I'm looking, and I just cannot look at all the ingredients, all the big pots that are there, and assemble a number of ingredients of a number of dishes to go with the rice that make me happy and feel good and full afterwards. And I think the main problem is I just don't see very many vegetables. There's rice, and then there's all the mutton curry and the chicken curry, and then there's chicken, and then there's basically a whole bunch of curries, a whole bunch of sauces. And there might be one weird sort of vegetable in one bin. And it's usually gone because by the time I get there, because there aren't that many vegetables, and then people take it, and then it's run out. So most of the time when I go in and I ask, like, are there any vegetables? And they'll say, well, we used to have vegetables, but it's all gone. So I just end up with rice and curry. And it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't come together very well for me. I must be missing something about how to put together one of these Indian meals at a restaurant around here. I guess I just don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, a lot of those meals don't really do it for me. I know a lot of people go crazy, like foreigners. Tread the Globe is the first one that comes to mind. The YouTubers, they have roti canai for breakfast. And they go crazy about it as, oh, I'm going back to Malaysia. I get to have my all-time favorite roti canai. And of course, I've had roti canai for breakfast, but to me, it's not a filling meal. It's basically some very liquidy curries, like usually 3 of them, 3 different flavors, and then a roti, some bread. And then you peel off bits of the roti and you dip it in the sauces and you eat it. It's just not a satisfying breakfast for me. It's a little bit of a snack, and it just doesn't do it for me. So I can't get excited about roti canai. Well, I have it, but it's not a meal for me. And then when it comes to lunch and dinner, yeah, I run into the same problem. So anyway, that brings me back to this economy rice place at JT Kopitiam. And they have an amazing display of dishes, like perfect for me. You get the rice, and then you've got all the meats. You can have pork, and then lots of chicken and different varieties, sort of a chicken curry sort of sauce. But then they have tons of vegetables, all kinds of lettuce and cabbages, like green leafy kind of stuff, different varieties. You can get broccoli. There's all kinds of vegetables. I have a whole assortment. So And mushrooms, big things of like mushrooms, and then all kinds of tofu dishes. So that is my idea of a good meal. So that's always my preference. And this one at JT Kopitiam is the only one I found in this neighborhood that is open at a regular time. I know where it is, and I know I can get a good meal there. But they're only there in the morning. After lunch, they shut down. So they won't have any food after like 1:30 or something like that. So I can't go there for lunch or for dinner, like late lunch or early dinner. So what I do when I go there for breakfast, after I have my wonton mee for breakfast, then I go to the back and I'll get an order of dinner from this place, and I put it in my room here to have it waiting for me. And of course, by the time I get back here, it's cold. But even cold, I love it. It is such a good meal, and it's so filling. My one issue was I had trouble with the container because I asked for it for takeaway. Because it's for takeaway. And then he puts the rice in the plastic container, but it's a lot of rice and the container is pretty much full. And then I have a lot of trouble filling it up with the other ingredients that I want. There just isn't enough room, and it ends up spilling over the sides. And I want that mushroom sauce with all the huge mushrooms and this gorgeous tasty liquid, the sauce that comes in. And I pour that all over the rice, and things threaten to fall apart. And and then I put a fried egg on top of it, all the veggies. And anyway, the last time I went there, I think the guy, he's exceptional at customer service, really friendly guy, very helpful. And then he saw that I was having trouble, and then he said to me the last time I went there, "Oh, do you want it separate?" And at first I didn't know what he meant, but he meant give me a container of rice, fold that up, it's done. Now here's another empty container. Go fill that up with all of your vegetables and your chicken and your mushrooms and your sauces, and fill that up with the other ingredients. And I was like, perfect. That's amazing. So that's what he does for me every time now when I go there. And then it doesn't come to very much. I get the last time I did, like the first time he gave me the second container, I thought, well, I'm probably going to end up putting a lot more in because I've got more space now. So I filled it up. And I thought, okay, it's going to cost more, but he looked at it, made a judgment call, and he says, yeah, it's 10 ringgit. So yeah, big thing of rice, big thing of veggies and chicken, and 10 ringgit. So it's a perfect meal. Today I didn't do that because there's another stall there that makes a kind of very big filling sandwich. And I asked him if I could have one of his sandwiches for a takeaway. So I have it sitting up here on the shelf. And that will be my dinner later on, that sandwich. It's a really big filling sandwich for 8 ringgit as well. I'm having trouble with my throat this morning. I don't know what's going on. Doesn't feel like it wants to talk, but maybe coffee will help me out. So for today's stories, I have Doug stories, my life stories. I've got Patreon, Planet Doug YouTube stories, I guess. And then I have YouTube vlogger stories, pop culture stories, and podcast stories. We'll see if I manage to get to all of them. So yeah, personal story. My big adventure was going back to do laundry. I thought I didn't have to do laundry again. I don't do laundry very often. And I go and do a laundry job where I wash every article of clothing I own, which isn't very much, but I wash everything all at once, and then I just wear it for as long as possible. Maybe I don't hang out with a lot of people, and maybe people would tell me, but the clothing doesn't seem to get smelly, it doesn't seem to get stinky, it doesn't seem to get dirty, so I can wear the same shirt over and over and over and over without washing it, if I'm not cycling or hiking or anything like that. So I can go for a very long time without doing laundry. And then if I have one shirt that I wear all the time, like this Canada shirt, then I can just take it into the shower and I wear it in the shower and soap it up and rinse it off, and I'm done. These shirts wash themselves practically. You can just take a shower wearing it, and when you step out of the shower, your shirt is clean. You just rinse it out and you're done. But But anyway, I've been doing a lot of hiking. Not a lot. I went for 2 hiking trips, but all my clothing, my pants and some of my shirts got very dirty and muddy and stinky and smelly. So I had to do a second load of laundry. So I went back there to do that. And in my last podcast, or 2 podcasts ago, I told this long laundry story, a long rant about laundromats. And this experience wasn't quite on the same level, but it was still pretty interesting. I went there, and the main adventure was I got all ready. I got all my clothing again. I even dug into the bag that I leave in storage here in Kuala Lumpur, and I have some old t-shirts and things in there. And I haven't worn them for ages, but I thought, well, they're probably getting a bit stinky from being in storage. So I got all my clothing and put it all together. I brought along my tablet because I was going to watch a TV show while I'm sitting there. I was all arranged. I had everything organized. I had my whole day planned around doing laundry. I go to my neighborhood laundry hub, this amazing laundromat, and the token machines were down. Like, you don't pay with money at these machines. You put your money into a token dispenser. 1 ringgit gets you 1 token. And then you put the tokens into the machine. But the whole system depends on being able to get tokens out of the machine. And they have 2 machines there. And as soon as I walked in, I knew there was trouble because the slots where you put the money in were flashing red. And red is all, unless you're wearing a Canada t-shirt, red is universally a negative color. It means stop. It means there's a problem. A red warning flashing light. Red is not a good color in the world of technology. So yeah, I saw the red flashing lights, and then I went up to them, and on the little display it said, yeah, system down. Sorry. And then I still tried. I tried to put money into both of them, 1 ringgit notes, 5, 10, 20, but it wouldn't take anything at all. So then I sat down and I thought, oh boy, now what do I do? Do I just go back to my hotel and come back later, hoping they were fixed? But I really wanted to do laundry, so I went looking for another laundromat on Google Maps, and I eventually found another laundry hub that was like 1 or 2 kilometers away, and I was just going to walk there. But then I had this thought, and I often have this thought. I think to myself, what would Harrison Ford do? This is sort of my motto in life. When I feel like I'm behaving like a child, like I'm not really a grown-up, and then I put on the persona of Harrison Ford. I think of Harrison Ford as an adult, of the man of the world who just deals with things as an adult would. So I think, well, what would Harrison Ford do in these situations? Of course, Harrison Ford wouldn't be doing his own laundry at a laundromat. We can start there. But assuming he was in this situation, well, he would call the company and find out whether they can come and fix it. And I thought, yeah, it goes against my nature completely. I don't like making phone calls. I hate talking on the phone. It's just nothing but trouble. But I thought, well, that's what an adult would do. So I went looking around the laundromat. I couldn't see a phone number anywhere. I looked on the machines. They often have a number you can call for service or something. I didn't even know whether I could make a phone call. Half the time when I get a SIM card, it turns out I have internet data, but I can't make a phone call. I've never been able to figure that out either. But then I went outside onto the street, and right on the side of the building was a big sign giving the name of the place, and it had a customer service hotline phone number. So I got out my phone, and I just got out the regular dial pad, the dialer, and I typed in the number, and to my amazement, it started to ring. And I thought, this is what adults do. This is what Harrison Ford would do. And then somebody answered, which amazed me. And then I spoke in English, and the man replied in English. And of course, I could barely hear him. There was all kinds of background crazy noise. He was probably driving his car, or he was out in a busy restaurant or something. Anyway, I could barely hear him. We were talking over each other, like, "Oh, so no, you go. No, I didn't hear. What? That's why I don't make phone calls. I can never understand what anybody is saying. I really can't. But eventually I just started speaking. I just spoke over him and I said, basically, our laundry hub. And then he said, yes. So, okay, I'm talking to the right guy. And then I said, the token machines are broken at your Dangwangi location. And again, we're like, so you mean, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. But anyway, he did hear me. And then he said something like, okay, coming. And then he hung up. So I thought, that's what adults do. And then I went back into the laundromat and I just sat down and I waited. I didn't know how long I was going to have to wait, but I was very proud of myself for making that phone call and then getting some service. It's not something I would normally do. But then I had this weird feeling because when I first went into the laundry hub, I made sure to go middle of the day because I wanted the place to be empty. I didn't want to deal with lots of other people, all the chaos that usually goes on in a laundromat. Then when I got there, I was so happy because it was completely empty. There's nobody else there. All the machines were available. I wasn't going to get in anybody's way. Nobody was going to get in my way. And it was like, amazing. This is so incredible. But then, of course, I had to wait for the guy to show up. And then now that I'm waiting, more customers started to arrive. And I was like, I missed my chance. I can't believe this. And these other customers, of course, they're like normal laundromat customers, and they're driving up in a car and they open the trunk and they're just taking out these huge bags, just bag after bag that they can barely carry. And then the whole laundromat routine was going to start up all over again. And the longer I would have to wait for this guy to show up, more people like that were going to show up. And then I had an evil plan. Just this wasn't a what would Harrison Ford do, what would an evil person do? Because I wanted the laundromat all to myself. I wanted these people to go away. So anyway, they came in, and before they what people normally do is they go straight to the machines, of course, and they put all their laundry in the machines, they pour in all their soap, all their softener, they get everything ready, then they go get the tokens. I've noticed that's how people always do it. I do it the opposite because I know without the tokens you can't get started. So you put all your stuff in the machine, then you can't get tokens. Now what do? You got to get everything out of the machine and you've wasted all your soap, all that stuff. So all these people came in and they're about to put their laundry into the washing machines. So of course I had to stop them. I went up to them and said, excuse me. And I pointed out to them that the token machines were broken. And then for about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, I had this evil plan that I was not going to tell them that the owner was coming because I wanted them to go away. They had a car and I figured I could show them the token machine wasn't working and they're going to go, oh, let's get back in our car. Let's drive to another laundromat. And then I let it go for a few seconds and I was waiting for them to leave. And then I thought, grow up, Doug. This is not what Harrison Ford would do. And then I told them. So I told them, yeah, I called the owner and the owner is coming and they're going to fix it. So then, of course, they sat down to wait with me. So I was like, oh, well. You had to be a nice guy, right? But then we ended up waiting quite a long time. And then they asked me, like, where did you get the phone number? Because they couldn't see it. And I told them where the phone number was. And I think they called the owner as well. And then they settled into wait. And then a woman came in, huge bags, same thing. And then she was about to put everything into the washing machine. And then I was looking at the other customers that were waiting. And then we was like, okay, who should tell her? Because I went to talk to the woman, but she didn't hear me or something. I was going, excuse me, but she didn't hear me. And then just as I was saying, excuse me, the other customers who were waiting also said something, but they said it in Malay, I believe. They said something in Malay. And then we looked at each other. It's like, oh, you go ahead. No, you go ahead. No, you. And we ended up settling on me, because I was closer. I should be the one. So I got up and I walked over to the woman and then got closer to her and said, "Excuse me, just so you know, the token machines are broken. And we called the owner is coming, but we don't know how long it's going to take." So then she was like, oh, thank you. And she waited as well. And then eventually the owner did come, and he did a whole bunch of roaming around. There's like a room with a key. He goes back there and reboots the machines. And I think the machines ran out of tokens. That was the problem. So he went into a back room and came out with a big, bucket of tokens, and you could hear him in the room, pouring them into the bin. And then he rebooted the machine, and then we could all get our tokens, and we could all do our laundry. So that was my laundromat story this time. Well, Planet Doug and cameras and Patreon. One thing going on there is my poor GoPro Hero 12, which to me is still essentially in my life a brand new camera. It's still malfunctioning. When I did the Bukit Dinding hikes, and even before that, the LCD screen on the back glitched out. It's all covered in static. You can barely read anything on it. And then maybe a week and a half ago, because it seemed to be permanent this time, it was a permanent breakdown. I was going to take it back to the camera store one more time, because the last time I did this, I brought it into them, showed them the problem. They sent it to the GoPro distributor, but then the GoPro distributor said they never saw the problem, so they just sent it back and they wouldn't do anything about it. And then now it comes and it goes, and now it seemed to be back permanently. So I thought, I don't really have enough time to bring it in, have them send it to GoPro, wait a month. I can't do that. So I thought, this was like a week and a half ago. And then I thought, let's just do it anyway, just to see. Maybe they'll do a Canadian thing. And when I go to the camera store, they'll take pity on me and they'll just say, "Oh, here you go." And they'll just get a brand new Hero 12 off the shelf in a box and just say, "Okay, here you go. We'll take this one and we'll deal with it. You've had enough problems." And maybe they'll finally take responsibility. So I thought I'll just go in. So I went to JT Kopitiam and I had breakfast. And I had the GoPro with me. I checked it in the morning several times, and the LCD screen was completely screwed up. So I thought, yeah, okay, let's bring it in. And then while I was at JT Kopitiam, finishing up my breakfast, just about to go to the camera store, I got my GoPro out of my bag, turned it on again, and the problem had disappeared. And now the screen looked fine. So I was like, oh. So now when I bring it into the camera store, they're going to look at it and go, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with it," right? These intermittent problems are the worst. And right now, when I turned on the GoPro every day for the past week and a half, the LCD screen is screwed up. And when I turned it on right now for this podcast, it was screwed up again. Let me turn it around and let me check. Yeah, it's I can't see a thing on that screen. So yeah, it's a pretty big problem, but I still have plans to go back to Sumatra, and I plan to go back very soon. I just keep procrastinating my departure date, but I can't bring the GoPro in and then wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Basically, I just go to Sumatra and I wouldn't have my Hero 12, and I don't want to do that. So I think I'm just stuck with it the way it is. I'll never be able to get it repaired or fixed or replaced under warranty. That's just not how things work in Malaysia, unfortunately. So that's one thing going on. Not a lot of Planet Doug video stories. I did post the Mini Tahan video, the extended cut. And for me, that was kind of interesting because when I went to Bukit Dinding to do the Mini Tahan Trail, I came up with this idea for 3 different challenges. 5 flower challenge, 5 mushroom challenge, 5 garbage challenge. So I had to find 5 mushrooms, find 5 flowers, find 5 pieces of garbage. And the whole day of hiking and shooting the video, the structure of the video was based on trying to complete these challenges. But then that ended up making a video that is over 2 hours long. So then I thought, well, can't really post a video that long. So then I tried to make it under 1 hour, and the only way to make it 1 hour was to delete all of the challenges. So that kind of gutted the video, like it removed the heart and soul of the video, to be honest. That was the whole story of the video. There was hiking Bukit Dinding, the Mini Tahan Trail. Sure, that was the story, but the challenges were sort of the focus of that story. But anyway, so I posted the 1 hour version first without the challenges, and people kind of liked the video. It really wasn't that popular, but you know, it was okay. And then I posted the extended cut 3 days later, and of course, because it's the second version of a video that people already know about, and it's 2 hours long, you're not going to get a lot of people interested in it. I did get a couple of nice comments from people, not very many. I think there's like 5 comments on the video. But yeah, people said, oh, I really like this version of the video. It's more fun because I'm doing these challenges. But not many people want to watch a 2-hour YouTube video. That's what I did. And then with the extended cut and with the last podcast, I was still doing the AI technique of getting a transcript, because YouTube makes captions automatically. So when you upload a video, you don't do anything, and then YouTube will automatically put CC, closed captions, on the video in usually auto-translated into English. And then you can pick other languages if you want, but mine defaults to English. And they're terrible. The captions are, there's no punctuation, there's no capital letters, there's no proper names, because the YouTube computer doesn't know about Masjid Jamek, even Kuala Lumpur, any proper name of a person or a place or a food. It's just gibberish. So they're not very good. But I learned that you can take those YouTube captions, select them in the YouTube Studio Languages feature. You go to like captions and you copy and paste them from YouTube into an AI, and then you tell the AI to fix them. Add proper spelling, proper punctuation, paragraph structure, and it automatically comes up with the right proper names, and it does an amazing job. I clean it up a little bit after the AI is done, but you don't really have to do very much. It does an incredible job. But I struggled a lot because different AIs work differently, and ChatGPT won't accept a big document. So if you put in a big document, it just says, no, that's too long. You have to break it up into pieces. And I have to break it up into such small pieces, it takes forever. I have to copy, paste, reassemble, copy, paste, reassemble. And it just takes such a long time. It's not worth doing, because I don't really need the transcript. I'm sort of doing it for fun, because once the transcript is done and it's perfect, then I copy and paste it back into YouTube, and it replaces the captions. So basically, the main reason I'm doing this is to delete the captions and replace them with perfect subtitles in English. And I think that's worth doing. So that's why I do it. But I only want to do it if I can do it quickly. If it takes me 2 hours of fiddling to do it, it's not worth my time. And in ChatGPT, yeah, it takes like 2 hours, and you're lucky to get it done after your 2 hours. But I discovered that the new one from China, DeepSeek, it could accept a long document. I put in like super long documents, like over 50,000 words, and it just says, fine, we'll do it. So DeepSeek was better. Unfortunately, DeepSeek is just unavailable these days. All I get is an error message saying that the servers are busy. No matter what I ask it to do, it just says, nah, can't do it. Try again later. So I had to give up on DeepSeek. And then I tried other ones. I tried one called Claude or Claude. It kind of worked, but then it has a limitation on how many. If you have the free version, you only get so many messages per day, and I hit the limit right away, and then I couldn't use it anymore. And there were some other limitations there. I tried a bunch of different ones, and then people started recommending Grok, which I believe is the one from Elon Musk's world. His companies made their own AI called Grok. And of course, Elon is not exactly a popular person worldwide right now because of his association with Trump, and he's very unpopular, and anybody wearing a Canada shirt is not going to be very happy with Elon Musk either, the whole 51st state business, which I'll talk about in a minute. But Grok, I'll give it a try, and it turned out Grok, it worked pretty well. It accepted big, long documents, so that made it better than ChatGPT, and it was always available. No matter when I tried to use it, it was up and running. DeepSeek, I could never use it, so I gave up on DeepSeek. Now, at the moment, I'm all about Grok. I'm a Grok guy. The one thing I noticed is it didn't do as good a job as ChatGPT in terms of correcting proper names and giving a paragraph structure. It wasn't doing as good a job there. But if I did it in 2 stages, it did a better job. Like I would get a corrected transcript. It might even be one big paragraph, 50,000 words, one paragraph. And then I would put it back into Grok and say a second time, oh, could you take this and divide it up into natural paragraphs? And if you give it a separate instruction to do that, then it does it very, very nicely. So I used Grok for this latest video. I just remembered I was doing all of this work not with the hiking videos, not with the podcast. Yesterday I shot a video, another Patreon tutorial video. My idea was to make a whole bunch of Patreon tutorial videos because when I created the Planet Doug Patreon, I realized very quickly that a lot of people don't even know what Patreon is. And even if they've heard of it, they don't know how to use it or what it's for. So I thought I have to teach people. So I was going to make some Patreon tutorial videos. And I made one of them that was sort of a Patreon overview. And then I was going to make some smaller ones focusing on all the different features. I just haven't had the time to do that. But yesterday I set aside some time and I shot a video and edited that video about Patreon collections. What are collections and what can they do? And if you are a Patreon member, how do you use them? What benefit do they give you? And I tried to make a video teaching people about the collections feature. And then I uploaded that video to YouTube, and then I was going to do the transcript thing. So I copied the captions into Grok, and then Grok did a perfect job. So yeah, that was very good. The one problem with Grok, and when is there not a technology problem? I ran into trouble because if you don't have an account, it won't keep your history. So I kept losing my work because I would put in this 50,000 word transcript and say, please spell check this document. And while it's working, I would go to another window. And now I'm replying to YouTube comments. I'm editing another YouTube video. I'm doing other work and I'm just letting Grok work in the background. But if you wait too long, then you go back to Grok. It completed your job. Then it waited like 5 minutes maybe, and then it deletes it and it's gone. It doesn't keep a history because I don't have an account yet. So, but if you want it to keep your history, you have to open an account. So I thought, okay, I'm sure you can open a free account. So I did that. I went to Grok and I put in my email address and all the information it wanted. And then you have to create a password. And I use my password generator to create this huge, complicated password. I made a password, put it in. But no matter how many times I did it, I got a server error from Grok and just says, oh, we're sorry, we cannot create your account right now. There was an internal server error. And I guess right now, according to Elon Musk, the X platform, used to be Twitter, is undergoing a big cyber attack. And maybe this is true. Who knows what's true and what isn't anymore? No, we have no idea anymore what's real and what isn't real anymore. But maybe Grok is suffering from this cyber attack as well. I don't know. But anyway, I thought, okay, maybe my password was too long, so I shortened it, and then I tried it again. Oh, server error. I kept changing the password, tried different email addresses. I tried to open an account, but I couldn't on Grok. So basically what you have to do then is wait for your job to finish, babysit your job, and as soon as it's done, copy and paste the results. Otherwise, it won't keep it for you. When you go back later on, it disappeared. It won't keep it in memory unless you open an account. But at the moment, Grok won't let me open an account. So that was my experience with Grok. The other thing that came out of that video, the one about Patreon collections, is that when I uploaded it to YouTube and I went to get the captions in the languages section, I noticed that it was busy dubbing my video into multiple other languages. And I thought, oh, that's cool. Because every other video I've posted about Bukit Dinding or Tai Pusam, all of my videos from Kuala Lumpur, they get an error message on YouTube. It's like it tries to dub it into other languages using the automated YouTube system, and then it glitches out. Maybe the videos were too long or something, but I just get an error message that says this video cannot be translated into other languages. So I thought, oh, maybe because I'm in Malaysia, that feature isn't fully available. Maybe because my account is based in Canada, it's not fully available. I didn't know. But then for this video, the Patreon collections tutorial, it said, oh, we're doing it. And it gave 8 different languages. Like, I can't remember them all, but it was English, German, Italian, American Spanish, it said, Portuguese, Japanese, Hindi, and one other. And I was kind of surprised at the languages it chose and French. I was assuming, well, it knows I'm in Malaysia. Why wouldn't it select Malay as one of the languages? Why Hindi? Why Japanese? I think they would have chosen Malay over those languages. Like if they wanted an Asian language, you'd think they would have picked Malay first, but for some reason they didn't. But it took a long time for them to do that. But what was interesting is the message I got telling me what it was doing is saying that, okay, YouTube is busy creating new audio tracks, right? We're not talking about subtitles. This is actual audio. So you can choose to listen to that video in French or Spanish and German. It shows German as well, or Japanese or Hindi or Portuguese. And it is a voice speaking in those languages. My video is in those languages, which is, again, you'd think, since the video is about going on a hike. Well, no, it isn't. It was a video about Patreon. I was going to say, if it's a video about Malaysia, they could assume maybe someone from Malaysia is going to watch the video. They would translate it into Malay. But anyway, but it did say, as a kind of a warning or an explanation, this voice may not sound like you. And I found that really interesting because it implies that it might sound like me. That the plan long term is for the YouTube AI system, because I'm sure they're using an AI to do this, is going to listen to my voice and then create a computer-generated model of my voice, and then eventually, when my video has somebody speaking in German, it will be me. It will sound like me speaking in German, or me speaking in Italian, speaking in French. So you'll hear, you can click on English. Oh, there's Doug. He's from Canada. He speaks English. But then you can choose German. It's like, whoa, when did Doug learn German? Because if you're just listening to the voice, it will sound like me speaking German. And I'm really looking forward to the day when that happens. I want to hear myself speaking all these languages. And I wrote about this on Patreon, a Patreon post, and I kind of made the joke, not really a joke, it's actually serious, that the AI version of me is superior to me in every way. It works faster, it writes better, it speaks more languages. I mean, if I could upload my videos to an AI, it could make a better YouTube video. I'm sure it could come up with a business plan. I mean, I'm hopeless when it comes to making money. My whole life I've been a complete moron when it comes to money. I'm sure the AI could take my work, my skills, whatever talents I have, and somehow find a way to convert what I do all day long into an income stream. I don't know how to do any of that. So the AI version of me would be so much better at living than I am. It can do everything better than me, smarter than me, faster than me, more logical than me, better, has more common sense than I do. So I don't know what the point of me is anymore. They might as well download my personality trait into a robot and go let the robot live my life for me. It would do a better job than I would. Yeah, I'm joking, but I'm quite serious at the same time. It's really quite an interesting world we're living in right now. Some thoughts on the Planet Doug Patreon. I mentioned that I made a tutorial video about Patreon collections, and that video is going live today at 5:15 p.m. Malaysia time. And it'll be interesting to see what people think of that video. It ended up being a lot longer than I thought. I really wanted to make very short and accessible tutorial videos, like very clear and to the point. But of course, I don't do anything clear and to the point. So it's a pretty long video. But I was talking about what collections can do. And essentially, a collection on Patreon is a group of Patreon posts. So that if I post a whole bunch of videos, if I post a whole bunch of Patreon posts, and each one is just containing a bunch of photographs, well, I can take all the photograph posts, put them together into a collection, and then I call it photos. And then you can just click on the photo collection and you see all the posts containing photos. So then I could take all of the Patreon posts that have Planet Doug videos in them, and I put all those together into one collection, and you can go to the collections tab and then say, oh, there's the Planet Doug videos collection, basically a folder, and you click on it. So, oh, there's all the posts related to Planet Doug videos, etc., etc. And then what I've been doing lately, a brand new thing, I had this idea right from the beginning when I started the Patreon, because when you're creating a Patreon, you're asking people to support you and your work, whatever it is, financially, and then in return, they get your work, of course, my main work being YouTube videos, but also you give them benefits. So I'm trying to think, well, what sorts of things can I offer people as a benefit for joining the Planet Doug Patreon? And then one of the things I have, of course, are online. I've got like 180,000 photos of my entire life. So my idea was to go into my archive of photos, and then from time to time I pick an interesting period of my life, an experience I had, or a country I visited, a city I visited, and I pull together the photos from that time or that place and make a Patreon album, and then I post the link to that album on Patreon. And then that is a benefit for Patreon members. So I did that over the last couple of days, and I was pretty pleased with myself, but I do keep running into an issue that always takes me by surprise. I forget about it, is that so many things in the world look different depending on your device. Because I do all this work on a laptop. So I always work on Patreon on my laptop because it's just easier, faster, more efficient. So I create a photo gallery from my archive online. I put a link to it on Patreon, and then on my laptop it plays as a slideshow. So, if somebody clicks on that post, it opens up a nice slideshow, and all the photos cycle past automatically as a slideshow presentation. It's very nice. So I made a couple of those. I made one from Nepal. I made another one from a time I went on a India youth exchange program. But just now, I was looking at those posts on my smartphone, and then I clicked on one, and there's no slideshow. So once you open it, this is the one about India right there. I'm waiting for the slideshow to start, and it wouldn't start. So I thought, maybe I have to click on it. So I click on it, and all it does is bring me to the album where it is hosted online, and then you can see all the photos in a big gallery, and you can click on them and open them up, and then you can click on the arrow button and look at all these pictures. Well, that's odd. No, okay. But there's no slideshow. So whether you go to my Patreon on a laptop or on a smartphone, you have a different experience. And of course, with Patreon, depending on how you join, you have a different experience as well, because I offer benefits to certain paid tiers. Each tier gets a different level of access, right, based on the perks and the benefits, as opposed to a free member. So you have to think about that all the time when you're creating or running a Patreon. But I always forget about this difference between a laptop and a smartphone. And I think most people, if they go to Patreon at all, they're going to use the app on their smartphone. They're not going to get on a laptop. So I constantly have to check now. It's like, okay, how does it look on a smartphone, so I understand what's going on. But yeah. So the other Patreon adventure that I had was from yesterday, where I posted this one. It's a link post, and it's called "We Are Canadian," a primer. That's what I called the Patreon post. Because, of course, we've got this whole thing going on. In my mind, to be honest, it's a joke. It's nothing to get upset about. I'm talking about this whole idea that when Donald Trump was elected president, he threw out there this idea of annexing annexing Canada, making Canada the 51st state of the United States. I mean, obviously, it's nonsense. Canada is a different country. There's no way it is going to become a part of the United States unless the U.S. wants to invade Canada using their military. They have the military power that they could do it, but obviously they're not going to do that. I say obviously, but maybe the world has gone so insane that that's even a possibility now. That just seems absolutely insane to me. But this thing that he threw out there, Canada as the 51st state, it's just nonsense. It's just ridiculous. But of course, it struck a negative chord with Canadians who are now reacting to that. And of course, Canadians are reacting with a great deal of national pride, and it's really uniting Canadians in a way that I have never seen in my lifetime. Not once. I don't think there has ever been an event, a world event, anything in Canada that feels so relevant to all of Canadians. Yeah, it's really quite something to see. And then there was this video that was making the rounds. That's the video there with the big Canadian flag. And I found it quite interesting. It is called We Are Canadian. And it has an interesting history because when I was growing up in Canada, there was an advertising campaign from a beer company in Canada, the Molson Canadian Company. Makes a light, not a light, but a beer in Canada, cold, refreshing Molson Canadian. And they had an advertising campaign called I Am Canadian. And a very famous commercial made the rounds back then. And it's like a part of my life. I think all Canadians are aware of this thing. It just got burned into my brain. And it had a younger man in his 20s dressed in typical, like a Canadian lumberjack sort of jacket, a flannel jacket. And he walks out onto stage like a Canadian would. He's sort of very hesitant and he's sort of very meek, and everything about his body language is like apologizing for what he's doing. He kind of goes out on stage like, sorry, excuse me. And then he goes up to the microphone, hello, I'm sorry, and very meek and mild. And then he does this presentation about Canadian things. And the whole commercial was basically based on this idea that we are not Americans. We are Canadians. And then he goes through all these things in Canada that maybe are specific to Canada. Like in Canada, a hat that you wear to stay warm in the winter, we call those toques. It's a toque. I grew up with that word. You wear a toque. And then he says, and then there's a big picture of a hat, and he says, this is not a hat, it's a toque. And he says, we do not live in igloos. I do not have sled dogs. I do not eat, like all the Canadian stereotypes that Americans might have, these ideas that Canadians live in igloos, things like that. And he's basically saying all these stereotypes about Canadians, they are not true. And things like, this one really rings true for me because I don't get this one at all. He says, and he puts a big picture of a boot, like a rubber boot on the screen. And he says, and we say about, not a boot. This is a boot. Because there's this joke all around the world that everybody believes in Canada we say a boot instead of about. And I've never understood this because I've never in my entire lifetime as a Canadian, I've never heard anybody say a boot. I mean, I don't get it. I don't say a boot. We say about, just the same as Americans say about. So anyway, I've never understood where the whole a boot thing came from. But it is a stereotype that Canadians say a boot. Anyway, the I Am Canadian commercial went through all these American stereotypes and then presented all these things that are uniquely Canadian. And then now, and that was back in 2000, so 25 years ago, that commercial came out. And then in response to Donald Trump's idea of the 51st state, the same guy recreated the video, but now it's called We Are Canadian, and it's not connected with a beer company. I'm not sure how he did it, to be honest. I don't know who paid for it. It would have cost a lot of money to make this video, the graphics and things like that. So maybe he paid for it personally, because I think it's on his YouTube channel. So it turns out that the guy's name is Jeff Douglas, and in the original 2000 commercial, he ended it by saying, my name is Joe and I am Canadian. So the whole thing was based, I am Joe, or my name is Joe, I am Canadian. But his real name is Jeff Douglas, and he went on to sort of a successful career in radio hosting and podcasting because he became quite famous because of that commercial, and he has a really good voice. He's really good on a microphone, and he's had a long career as a radio host. But anyway, his name is Jeff Douglas, and now in the We Are Canadian video, he says, "My name is Jeff," because that's his real name, and we are Canadian. And then he basically is speaking directly to Americans, essentially, and addressing Donald Trump directly. And he goes through all of these Canadian things. And so I watched the video a number of times. People send me links to it, of course. "Oh, have you seen this? Have you seen this?" And then I'm watching the video, and then I decided to make my own Patreon post as kind of a primer. So I have a list on Patreon of all the things he mentions in the video that are Canadian references. And I was thinking that most non-Canadians wouldn't know what these things are. So he talks about double-double, and a double-double is a particular coffee order at Tim Hortons. He talks about poutine versus Putin. That was my favorite joke, that for Canadians, like poutine is a dish from Quebec, and it's like French fries. Like classic poutine is French fries, cheese curds, and gravy. And that's poutine. And of course, in the United States, the Trump administration, they are in love with Putin, the leader of Russia. So he's saying, this is we Canadians, we are in love with Poutine. Americans, don't get it twisted, you're in love with Putin. Poutine, Putin, they're different things. And that was my favorite joke. And then he says, "This is the land that Terry ran." And he's referring to a very famous Canadian, Terry Fox, a cancer. He died of cancer. And Terry, before he died, he tried to run all the way across Canada, raising money for cancer research and cancer awareness. And he's a hero in Canada. So when he says Terry, that's who he's referring to. I talk all about Terry Fox on Patreon. And then he says, "the land that Gord sang about." And there, of course, he's referring to the Canadian folk singer, Gordon Lightfoot. I write about him in the Patreon post. And then he talks about this is the birthplace of peanut butter and ketchup chips and yoga pants. And I don't think peanut butter was invented in Canada, but he says it is the birthplace of peanut butter. Maybe it is, I don't know. But anyway, I do know that peanut butter is very popular in Canada. I write about that. And he mentions a bench clearing brawl, and that's a reference to hockey, where people fight a lot in hockey, like they get into a boxing match in the middle of a hockey game for some reason. But sometimes it's such a big fight that the entire team leaves the bench and fights the other team. So they cleared the bench. So that is a bench clearing brawl. It's a hockey reference. And then he talks about Canada is the land of getting her done. And he uses a beaver as a symbol of that. And on Patreon, I talk about how the beaver is the national animal of Canada, and it symbolizes hard work and perseverance and getting the job done. And then he talks about how Canada is the land of the peacekeeper and the Shawinigan handshake. And on Patreon, I talk about what that is, the mystery of the Shawinigan handshake. And he refers to how, he says, we are the first to unite in a crisis. And for that sentence, he has a picture in the background. A lot of people wouldn't understand. It's a bunch of people on like a bridge going to an airplane with the word Gander on a sign. And that refers to the town of Gander, Newfoundland. And I guess during the 9/11 attacks, the airspace in the United States was closed, and all the planes flying into the U.S. had to be diverted, and like 238 of them landed in airports in Canada. And I guess a lot of them, landed in this very, very small town in Newfoundland called Gander. Like 28 or 38 planes landed at this tiny airport in Gander. And then the people of Gander, the Canadians there, welcomed all of the stranded passengers and crew into their homes and gave them a place to stay and fed them and helped them out. So again, that's kind of a dig at Donald Trump as well, because pointing out the fact that Canada is probably their best friend in the entire world, and they're losing friends quickly, so they can't afford to be so rude to Canada by claiming they're going to take it over as the 51st state. And they're like, he's pointing out that, hey, during the 9/11 crisis, we stepped up to help you. The entire world came together to help you. So come on, what are you guys talking about? So yeah, what else did he talk about? Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things in the video. Anyway, on Patreon, I talk about that video at length. And it's kind of to help people understand what he's talking about. Yeah, I did that yesterday. I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. And one of my Patreon members left a comment, very short and to the point, where he says, elbows up. And even I had to think for a minute, because elbows up, is that a uniquely Canadian expression? I had to think about it because, I haven't lived in Canada for a long time, so I may not be up to date on all the Canadian expressions, but it rang true for me, like elbows up. Yeah, I think that's a Canadian thing. And my idea, I could be wrong about this, but my idea is that it comes from hockey. And I believe it started with Gordie Howe, one of the very first hockey ultra superstars from Canada, Gordie Howe. And he was known for being a tough guy. And then in hockey, it's a very tough physical game. And when things really get rough on the ice in a hockey game, you come in for a check with your elbows up, which is actually an illegal move in Canada in hockey. If you check somebody and you elbow them to the head, that's a penalty. That's a 2-minute penalty. Elbowing, you're not allowed to use your elbow as a weapon in hockey. But Gordie Howe would do it. When things get tough, he's out there, get your elbows up. And if you get your elbows up, that's a message to get in there and get tough. Get your elbows up and fight. So that's a whole Canadian thing, I think, coming from hockey. And I looked online, actually, and on YouTube, I found 3 different songs called Elbows Up. And that the whole thing is taking over Canada, this idea of we're not the 51st anything. It's really uniting Canadians. It's really quite interesting. But there's all these songs now that people are writing them using AI. Because I saw a link, like an elbows up song, and I clicked on it, and I started listening to the song, and I kind of went, ugh, this is cheesy. Okay, I get the whole Canadian national pride business and Canadian symbolism, but this song was a little bit on the nose. It was just too much. It was over the top. No, this is cheesy. This is I don't like this song. And then I figured out very quickly, the whole thing was created by AI. Somebody wrote a prompt and said, write a country and western song called Elbows Up, and then told it to write a song about Canadian history, Canadian values, Canadian symbolism, and how we are not the 51st state of the United States. And then AI wrote the lyrics, wrote the song, wrote the music, played all the instruments, and then sang the song as well. And right now, when an AI makes a song, you can usually tell. And then I found another one. A man actually wrote the song himself, sang it himself, and played the guitar himself, called Elbows Up. And then I found another song where a guy wrote the lyrics, but then he asked an AI to take those lyrics and make a song out of it. And but anyway, so yeah, there's all these songs on YouTube now called Elbows Up. But I'm not a very nationalistic person. I don't get all excited about these things. I find them interesting. It's an interesting topic, but I'm not going to go around the world, going, Canada, yay, Canadian pride, Canada, Canada. Because, again, I'm a very logical person, and when you think about it, borders between countries are real. When you've got a border on one side, people might speak one language, and on the other side of the border, they speak a different language. They might have different food, different culture, different history, different currency. So yeah, national borders are real, and countries are different, yes, but those aren't the only divisions in life. Like, where do you draw the line? Like, if you want to go rah, rah, my team is the best, well, which team do you pick? Because we're all members of 100 different teams. Okay, I'm a Canadian, yes, because I was born inside that geographical region. That makes me a Canadian. That's my team. But I was also born in the city of Sarnia. That's my hometown in Canada. So that's another division. I'm from Sarnia. So should I be proud of being a Sarnian? That Sarnia is the best city in the world, and we're better than that city, and we can have the Sarnia anthem, the Sarnia this. That's a division as well. My family immigrated from the Netherlands to Canada, so I'm part of this group of Dutch immigrants. So I can go, rah, rah, that's my team. Then I can go, well, Sarnia is in the province of Ontario, right? And Ontario is another division. I could go, rah, rah, Ontario is the best. Like, where do you draw the line? Sure, a country is probably the biggest group that we are all a part of, but we're all part of dozens of different groups, depending on how you divide up our lives. And then what team do you take pride in, right? So sure, when it comes to the Olympics and sporting events and things like, and economics, I guess. But even economics, right now, of course, all of this trouble has been started by tariffs. And as far as I can make out, all the problems are happening because the Trump administration doesn't know what a tariff is. And most of the American people who voted for Trump, they don't know what a tariff is. And it's like one of the most basic things in life, but they don't seem to understand it. That when Donald Trump puts a tariff on Canada, everybody thinks Canadians are giving money to the United States. That's what he thinks a tariff is, that it's a tax on Canadians. So we're going to put a 20% tax on Canada, and we're going to get all this money from Canada, and we'll put a 20% tariff on China, and we get all this money from China, and we're going to be rich. And a lot of Americans think that's how tariffs work. And I honestly don't know how people can be that dumb, but I guess you should never underestimate that for the general population. But that's what they think tariffs are, which is just so weird. So that's one weird thing about it. But also putting a tariff on a particular product, thinking that tariff focuses on a country, is really kind of ridiculous. Like cars. If you put a tariff on cars from Canada coming into the United States, well, what are you doing with that exactly? It's not even a Canadian car. As far as I know, there is no such thing as a Canadian car company. We may have had one in history, but I don't think we have. There's never been a big manufacturer of cars in Canada, but of course we have car plants all across Canada. We make Fords and Chevys and Toyotas and Kias, and all these cars are being made in Canada, but they're companies from other countries all around the world. And then even those cars, it might be an American car, but the parts that make that car are coming from countries all around the world. Like, economics is completely international these days. So these tariffs that are being applied to countries willy-nilly just miss the point entirely, because even those products that you're putting the tariffs on, for one thing, the Americans pay the tariffs. If you're putting a tariff on Canadian oil or Canadian lumber, which really does come from Canada, only from Canada, well, the Canadians aren't paying the tariff. The Americans, you're basically taxing Americans. Anyway, the whole thing is crazy. But the whole idea, again, what I'm getting back to is I don't tend to get overly excited about patriotism based on countries, because as I pointed out, your citizenship is only one part of who you are. You are part of so many groups around the world. And then eventually, of course, if you want to get into science fiction, eventually we're going to have some aliens from another galaxy arriving. And of course, now you're part of planet Earth, or you're part of the human group as opposed to animal species. I mean, we are a multitude. I am not just a Canadian. I am so many other things. And I don't see why I should get so crazy worked up about one of those groups when I'm a member of so many groups in total. But anyway, how's that for a tangent about, and of course I made sure to wear my Canada shirt because I knew I was going to be talking about this We Are Canadian commercial. I kind of enjoyed it quite a bit. And of course, the Canada shirt was a gift. I talked about how I'm not that nationalistic. I'm very logical, I think, and I'm very practical. But a Planet Doug subscriber, actually, my channel was called The Cycling Canadian back then, probably. And someone sent me this shirt as a gift when I was living in Thailand, I believe. And then it's an amazing shirt. It's really one of the most comfortable shirts I've ever had. Perfect size for me, etc., etc. So I wear it all the time. But me personally, if I'm out shopping, I'm not going to buy a Canadian branded shirt. I have nothing against it, but yeah, I mean, I love the shirt, but it isn't something I would do naturally. Anyway, We Are Canadian. Yeah, watch that commercial. It's a lot of fun. I've jumped ahead in time. It's now about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the next day, Friday, March 14th. My throat has just been feeling really weird lately, and I couldn't really keep talking yesterday, and it feels equally weird today, but I thought I could try again with another fresh cup of coffee and finish up some of my stories for this podcast. The first is this YouTube vlogger story from the Two Mad Explorers. And of course, I've been following their journey ever since they started off on their decathlon bicycles from Bangkok, intending to ride all the way to Shanghai, about 4,000 kilometers. And they've been really struggling on their trip, not really having a very good time, as it turns out. But yeah, apparently they're determined, again, to go all the way. When they entered Vietnam, it just started raining on them, like raining day after day after day. And then one day they tried cycling in the rain, and everything got soaked. They got soaked. It was miserable. They were worried about their laptops and camera gear, all their expensive equipment inside their bicycles' pannier bags, which were not waterproof. They put them like inside many, many layers of garbage bags to try to keep everything dry, but yeah, it's just a horrible time cycling in the rain. So they stopped, and then they were in such a down mood about the whole thing. They were even talking about stopping the bike trip. They were going to continue their trip to Shanghai, but they were going to do it by bus, or at the very least, they were going to hop on a bus to get them the rest of the way to Hanoi, because in Hanoi they had to take a break from the cycling anyway to get visas for China. And they thought, well, if it's just going to keep raining like this all the time, let's just throw our bikes onto a bus or into the back of a truck or however they can do it, and then just get to Hanoi. And then while we're waiting for our visas for China, maybe the weather will improve, and then they can get back on their bikes and continue on. And though the next video after that, they started cycling again, and I think they got as far as one of the Nins. I think there's a few cities there called Nin something, and there's a very famous one, a beautiful place called Ninh Binh, which a lot of foreigners go to, and they went there as well. They didn't show a lot of these towns. For their videos now, they seem to be focusing heavily on cycling. So even when they take like 5 days off the cycling, when it was raining, that's what they did. They stayed in this one town for 5 days, waiting for the rain to stop, but they never shot any video. So there's no video record of their time in that town. And yeah, so even when they went to like Ninh Binh and these places, they didn't like take a week and explore that area and make videos about it. What they're doing, and it's probably a very sensible thing to do when you think about YouTube, is this particular series of videos are about cycling. They're not about Laos, they're not about Vietnam, they're really not about China. They're not about anything but cycling. So every video is a day of cycling. And that's how they're doing it. So I guess it makes a lot of sense that if they started mixing in videos about other topics, maybe people would lose interest because now their YouTube channel doesn't have a story anymore. And I think what I've seen in my time being on YouTube is that people want a story. Your videos can be really good, they can be amazing, they can be well done, they can have an interesting topic, but nobody's going to watch them unless they're part of an overarching story. And I think maybe they realized that, and I think they realized as well that cycling videos are not popular on YouTube at all. I think looking back on their YouTube channel for Luke and Naomi, a lot of their older videos would have 80,000 views, 100,000 views. They're quite popular YouTubers, but it looks like as soon as they started cycling, the huge dip down to like 6,000. Like it used to be 100,000 views hovering around there and down, and now it's like 10,000 and down because I think they started cycling. Cycling just doesn't attract an audience the same way that motorcycles do. Oh yeah, this is good. But maybe since they realized that their cycling experience is not going to attract a huge audience anyway, so why don't we, let's not invest a huge amount of time in it or effort. Let's just make video per day of cycling and get this cycling journey done and over with and move on to something better. That I'm guessing that is their thought. But anyway, they did, in fact, from Ninh Binh, I think they were from Ninh Binh, they decided to take they talked to some local people at their hotel, I guess, and they arranged to have them driven to Hanoi. They said, yeah, we'll take you and your bikes to Hanoi. And there's a little bit of that in one of their videos, and I found that kind of interesting because I've been in that situation myself in the past many times where, well, not many times, but I've been in that situation where for whatever reason you're putting your bike on top of a train, onto a bus, or someone offers you a lift and says, hey, I'll drive you in your bike, and it works out good for your schedule, for the weather, for whatever reason, and you say, oh yeah, okay, let's do it that way. And in the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, this is going to be really easy, this is going to be so much easier than cycling. But it usually doesn't turn out that way, because in this case, as Luke talked about, he thought when he accepted the offer of this person to drive them to Hanoi, well, they're just going to put their bikes up on the top. So they got their bike, they just pick it up, put it on the top. Maybe they've got a rack and the bikes can be standing straight up and down, and they tie them down and away they go. But then they just showed up with like a big SUV or a minivan or something, and now they have to somehow figure out a way to get two bicycles in the back of this thing. And it's really hard to do. You kind of look at a bike and you look at a vehicle and you think, oh yeah, I can toss those bikes in there, no problem. But it's never as easy as you're going to think. And then you start dismantling it and taking the wheels off, and now you've got all these greasy bits and the derailleurs that are dragging on the ground, but you got to protect them, and they still won't fit in. Then you got the handlebars you got to take off, and now the seats got to come off. It turns into a pretty major operation. And then by the time you finish loading up your bikes, driving to the next town, unloading your bikes, putting them all back together again, you do start to think, that was so much work, I might as well have ridden my bike. It would have actually been easier just to keep riding. I've had that experience in the past, and yeah, it seemed to be a little bit that way for Luke and Naomi as well. But then they did, as I said, take a van into Hanoi with their bicycles. And they still didn't seem to be too excited about this whole cycling business. It was probably a good idea to get into Hanoi that way, because some of the most difficult cycling in the world is into a major city like Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Kuala Lumpur. Pick any big city in the world, and then cycling in and out of those large metropolitan centers is, yeah, it's never a whole lot of fun. So it's probably worked out well for them in the end. And that was previous videos, but they just posted a new one. And it's the new one that I sat down here to talk about. And this is episode 27 of their journey. And I think every episode is one day of cycling. So this was day 27 of cycling from Bangkok. I mean, their trip might have been 60 days now, but 27 days of cycling, something like that. And it's called The Journey to the Chinese Border Begins, Escaping Hanoi. And I do find their attitude to China kind of interesting, because it indicates to me that they have a totally different attitude about China than I do. On this whole journey, they've been looking forward to getting to China. Like when they were in Thailand and things were not that enjoyable and it was quite difficult, they seem to refer to can't wait till we get to China. And then when they're in Laos, it's like, when we get to China. It's all about getting through Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and then finally we can cross the border into China. Yes. And they must have, I don't know their history, to be honest. I don't know much about them. But I'm assuming, they've been to China before. I know that. But I haven't watched any of their videos from China. But I guess they had a really good time in China, because they have nothing but positive attitudes about China. They're really looking forward to it. And they just seem to be totally uninterested in any other country, like Thailand, Laos, Vietnam. These are only barriers to get through so that we can finally get back to China. And I've never had a good experience in China. And everything I see online, every travel experience I see, everything about the country, for me, rings negative. I have no interest of ever going to China again. And if I did go to China, I think I would be dreading it rather than looking forward to it. I can't think of anything that I would be anticipating in China that would be pleasurable. I would only be anticipating problems and an unwelcome place, a difficult place, bureaucratically and in every other way. It's like the last place I would think of in positive terms. And yet for them, it's a symbol of a wonderful place they can't wait to get back to, which I find kind of interesting. We'll see if it turns out that way for them. Even in this video, Luke was looking ahead. He did this little intro to the day's video, and he talked about how, this is a quote, "We are going to be making our way through some of the most remote and rural areas that China has to offer. We are going to be taking ourselves into some pretty extreme situations. But first, we have to escape the gray, hellish landscape of Hanoi." So yeah, that's like a 2-for-1 in terms of their attitude about how they're looking forward to China. They're excited about it being in, are they really going to be in an extremely remote, really rural part of China? I don't know. They're cycling in a straight line from Hanoi to Shanghai, and that's the most heavily populated part of China, isn't it? Sort of the rice area, the rice belt there. But I don't know. I don't know if that's really considered remote. For me, it doesn't feel like it's remote part of China, but could be. I don't really know. But again, when they talk about China, very excited. But then as soon as he starts talking about where they are now in Vietnam, suddenly it's hellish. The gray, hellish landscape of Hanoi. And then Naomi later refer to where they are as a dystopian movie. And then I think that might have been Luke again, but Naomi talks about Vietnam, about it has taken the good bits of joy for cycling out of us. Like she's talking about how Vietnam has what was good about the small things that they still liked about cycling. Vietnam has taken away even those things that Vietnam has been so terrible. She says there's really no ups and downs. It's just been gray soup, gray environment, gray everything. And when I watched their video, this latest one, yeah, I mean, I see what they're talking about. And from their video and from other videos I've watched recently, it seems like if you go to Vietnam on a cycling trip in particular, you really have to pick your season carefully, because the rainy season is just bad. And there's lots of countries in the world, like here in Malaysia, for example, where I am right now, I seem to be here, whenever I'm here, someone tells me it's a rainy season of some kind. I've never been here when someone has said to me, oh, this is the beautiful dry season. It's always the rainy season. And I mean, if it's not the rainy season right here on the west coast, it'll be the rainy season on the east coast or down south or down north. Anyway, if it's raining outside and I comment on the rain, someone will say, well, it's the rainy season. So like it's always the rainy season, but I wouldn't let that control when you come to Malaysia, because even in the rainy season, you wake up in the morning, there can be a beautiful sunny day, and it's just nice and sunny all day. And then at 3 o'clock, the thunder clouds move in, and there's like a 30-minute downpour, and then the clouds disappear. And that's the rainy season. It rains once in the afternoon. Or when I was in Sumatra, it always seemed to be the rainy season in Sumatra as well. But then it'd be raining all night long, and you wake up in the morning and everything's flooded and full of water. But then the sun comes out during the day. So it doesn't really have a bad effect on your trip. But in Vietnam, it seems like the rainy season means it's gray and overcast and drizzling and raining all day long, just day after day after day. A lot of people seem to have experienced that recently. The We Hate the Cold, the UK vlogger, who, by the way, is here in Kuala Lumpur right now. I've been trying to arrange to meet up with him, but he's been way too busy, so I probably won't be able to catch him with any free time, but we'll see. But he cycled through Vietnam, and it in the latter part of his journey, it just seemed to rain constantly, all just like never-ending rain. That's what he talked about in his video a lot. And Luke and Naomi, rain, and other people, other videos I've watched, is rain and gray and drizzly all the time. So, yeah, the one thing I really wanted to know about was the visa situation, because they went to Hanoi to get a visa for China, and to me it seems like that visa is the key to everything, because if all they can get is a 30-day tourist visa, non-extendable or extendable with great difficulty, that can really put a damper on their China experience, because they're not going to be able to move very fast on their bicycles. So I was wondering, are they going to be able to get a 60-day tourist visa that can be extended for another 60 days? Or, like, I don't know what's available for China. Again, my impressions of China are not positive, so my instinct is to say that if you go to a Chinese embassy anywhere in the world, they just don't want to give you a visa, that they just don't want people to come to China. That's my impression of the country. But I don't know, they have a very different experience of the country, so. But anyway, they started cycling towards the border. They're back on their bikes, and they left Hanoi, and they have like 2 or 3 days to reach the border, they said, with China. And so I guess they got a good visa. I mean, if they weren't able to get a visa, obviously they wouldn't be going, and they don't seem to be that worried. So I guess they got a visa that is an appropriate length for cycling in China, but they didn't talk about it at all. Like I said, I think they were in Hanoi for a week or more, maybe 10 days. I don't know, quite a long time. And but they didn't shoot any video at all about their time there. So I don't know what they were doing while they were there, other than getting visas. And I guess they got a visa, but they didn't mention it in this video. As far as I know, it's not mentioned in the video description or on Instagram or anywhere else where they might be posting. But yeah, well, in the last time I talked about them, I talked at length about kind of a difference in terms of the attitude towards cycling, and I didn't see anything different in their attitudes here. They're cycling, but they're not really enjoying it. They're having a good time, it seems, when they get off the bikes. They stopped outside of Hanoi in a relatively small city. Looked like a really cool city, a very interesting place. Again, the Planet Doug approach. I could spend a month in that one city exploring that one place. But they just arrived, found a hotel, really nice hotel, I think, if I'm thinking of the right video. And the Vietnam is such good value for hotels. Yeah, a friend of mine, fellow YouTuber, the Frugal Wanderer, he just went back to Vietnam and he's back in Dalat. And the last video of his that I watched, he arrived in Saigon. So he's not in Dalat yet in this video, he's in Ho Chi Minh City. But he picked out a hotel there, the Tien Ha Hotel in District 3. And he was showing the inside of the room, and my jaw was sort of like, wow, what a nice place. And he's paying a bit more than a like super low budget hotel, but he said it costs like $20 US. And I looked online, I looked on Google Maps, and it's like 70 to 80 ringgit, maybe hovering around 70 ringgit per night. And in terms of Kuala Lumpur, it's incredible value. That hotel room looks nice. You're not going to get that in Malaysia for 70 ringgit. At least I'm not aware of places that nice for that much money. But anyway, their hotel room in this city is like, I forget the name of the city in China where the two mad explorers are, but they had a nice hotel. They went out to this park and went out to a lake, and there's an island with a coffee shop in the middle of the lake, and they had this amazing cheesecake, amazing chocolate cake, and yeah, it looked like they were living a pretty good life. But they rode their bikes for like 45 kilometers that day, and that's a very, very comfortable ride. Even in the hellish landscape of Hanoi, that would have been a very nice ride. So that is what the two mad explorers are up to. And yeah, I'll do a little bit. I'll look back. I'll check in on them from time to time. I'm curious about how their cycling journey ends up. And again, yeah, I want to find out about this visa that they got. Not that I'm ever going to do it. You're not going to catch me cycling in China ever. But yeah, I'm curious how it affects their journey. Travel with Ben. To be honest, I have no reason to be talking about these videos or about this YouTube channel, Travel with Ben. It's just that in my last podcast, I did a deep dive into his video about the Batu Caves. And I did that in particular because I'm interested in any YouTube vlogger that comes to Kuala Lumpur, because I know the city relatively well from a tourist's point of view, and I like to see how other people experience the city. What do they do? What do they think of the place? And what kind of videos do they make? How do they package the experience? And of course, 90% of the travel vloggers who come here, they all package it the same way. They all go to the same places, and they have a Ramly burger, and they have nasi lemak. And then the videos will all be something like how they were shocked and amazed at everything, and they didn't expect Malaysia to be however it is they found it. It's a pretty common thing. But then a lot of people go to Batu Caves, and I developed this little joke test, the Planet Doug Batu Caves test, where I give the video either a failing or passing grade based on how they go to Batu Caves and how they talk about the place and what they do when they're there, and their video about Batu Caves. And again, 90% of the vloggers that I follow, they fail the test. It's a very easy to pass. If you're just talking about pass, fail, it's a very easy test to pass. My standards are very low, but then the standard of YouTube videos can also be very low, and almost everybody fails. And it's very rare for anybody to get a good grade, like even a B plus or an A, or let alone an A plus. But anyway, I saw this new one popped up on my YouTube feed from a guy called Travel with Ben from the UK. Again, it's kind of funny though, when I was watching his Batu Caves video, I was listening to his accent, and I thought, this guy's not, I thought he was Australian. I was trying to figure out where he was from, and I concluded that's gotta be an Australian accent, but his accent seemed to go all over the place. I couldn't figure it out. And then in one of the videos that I watched, one of his 2 new ones, he talked about that. People ask him, it was a video from like months and months and months ago. He did one of these Ask Me Anything videos where people could ask him questions. And people asked him, like, what's up with your accent? Where are you from? And he talked about that. And he says, yeah, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm British. I'm from the UK. I have a British accent. Like, what's the big deal? But he says a lot of people comment on his accent, that there's just something weird about it. And he doesn't know what it is. As far as he's concerned, he just has a normal British accent. But me, I'm the dumbest person alive when it comes to many things. And I'm very much the dumbest person alive when it comes to accents. I cannot hear accents. I don't understand accents. So if even I'm noticing there was something up about the way he spoke English, that means there's something going on, because even I noticed it. But no, he's like, yeah, I'm from Britain, and what's the big deal? But no, there's something weird about his accent. But it turns out he answered that question. He said, no, I am from the UK. So I was completely wrong. I guessed Australian. But what was I saying about him? Yeah, he went to the Batu Caves, and it was probably the worst, for my money, the worst Batu Caves video I've ever seen. He got a failing grade, though maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh, because to pass the Batu Caves test, you actually have to know a few factual things about the cave. And unlike many YouTubers, he took the time to call up at least the Wikipedia page, so he knew the name Lord Murugan, and he knew about a little bit of the history of the cave, and he knew it was a Hindu holy site, that they were Hindu temples. I mean, that's pretty much as far as it went in terms of his knowledge, but that's better than most. So I would almost have given him a passing grade. He even knew how high the statue was, which is very unusual. But, he looked it up right before he turned to the camera, so he had the number in his brain. But yeah, then the rest of his video I thought was so bad that there's no way I could give him a passing grade, so I failed him. But because I did the Batu Caves test on Travel with Ben, I decided to watch a couple more of his videos. And I wanted to get some context, because I think he was already in Kuala Lumpur for a day or so before he went to the Batu Caves. So there was a video he shot where he went from Singapore to Malaysia. He flew from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, so he went through the airport and did all of that. And then he was leaving, and he posted a video, and then he was talking about his experience in Kuala Lumpur, and he posted one video, and then he left and flew to Vietnam, and he posted that video. So I watched those 2 videos just because I wanted to find out, like, what's up with this guy? This whole Batu Caves business, is that normal for him to be that kind of person? So I wanted to find out more about him. After this, I'll never watch one of his videos again, because there's no reason for me to do it, or certainly no reason for me to talk about it. But anyway, so the first video is called 3 Months Traveling in Asia. Are all cities the same? And then the second video I watched is called Travel Day to Vietnam Was a Disaster. And what jumped out at me about the first video, and then he repeated it in the second video, is his attitude about Kuala Lumpur and then Asia in general. So as he said the theme of this video is, are all cities the same? I.e., I think what he's saying is, are they all really boring and uninteresting? And his answer is a resounding yes. They're all the same, and they're all kind of boring. And he says, this is a quote, "If I explain Kuala Lumpur, I'm also explaining Bangkok and Manila, because they're exactly the same." So that's his attitude. And then in his Vietnam video, he says, "I was in Kuala Lumpur for a few days, and if anyone asks me my opinion about Kuala Lumpur, I would say, nothing. I don't have an opinion about it. There's not much going on. It's a big city in Asia. I feel exactly the same about Manila. I feel the same about Bangkok. I won't remember much about these cities, to be honest. So when I saw that video saying that Kuala Lumpur, Bangkok, and Manila are all the same, again, my jaw kind of dropped. Like, I don't even know where to begin with that statement. How do you go to those three cities and then conclude they're all the same? And like I said, normally I'm not generally at a loss for words, but when it comes to something like that, it's like someone arguing something that is so completely incomprehensible, you don't even know how to argue back because it's so obvious to you. Like, how do you go to Manila in the Philippines and then Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and then Bangkok and then you dismiss them? They're all the same. Again, I don't get it. I don't even understand how that brain can even operate. But then when I watched his Kuala Lumpur video in full, then I kind of got the idea, because when he was here in Kuala Lumpur, he went to see the Petronas Towers. He went to KLCC Park, the KLCC Mall, of course, and he went to the Aquaria, which is kind of interesting, but the Aquaria is also kind of nearby. It's part of the whole KLCC experience. And that's it, pretty much. And in terms of food, I think he went to McDonald's, and I think that's the only food. And he went to Mishwe. I guess is that from China? I'm getting the impression that it's from China, because in all his videos, he gets so excited every time he sees one of these Mishwe ice cream shops, and he starts singing the Mishwe theme song. Oddly enough, he speaks Chinese, which is really odd to me because he doesn't seem like a guy who ever cares about the country he's in. But I guess he did live in China, and while he was in China, he learned to speak Mandarin. And man, hats off to him for that, because I'm not learning Chinese no matter how much time you give me. It's never going to happen. So I'm pretty impressed with that. So you'd think the attitude of a guy who has the capability and the interest to learn Mandarin, you'd think he would also have the ability to sense that Manila and Kuala Lumpur are different cities. You know, so he's a real mixed bag, this guy. But anyway, so what he did in Kuala Lumpur was basically nothing. He went to Batu Caves, and then he went to KLCC and the Petronas Towers. And I haven't seen his Manila video, I haven't seen his Bangkok videos, but I'm assuming he did the same thing there. He got a nice room at a nice 3-4 star accommodation in a condominium tower with an infinity pool, and then he went walking around the skyscrapers in that neighborhood, sort of the business district, went to Mishwe, and then went to McDonald's, and then he left the country. So if that's all you're going to do in that country, well, obviously you're going to not have done anything. So anyway, yeah, so he looked at the skyscrapers in Manila, looked at the skyscrapers in KL, then I guess he saw the skyscrapers in Bangkok and said, well, these cities are all exactly the same. Obviously, I beg to differ, and I would dive into a long rant about how those cities are different, but I don't think I need to. Anyone with half a brain can figure that out for themselves. But anyway, apparently, according to Ben, they're all the same. All the cities in Asia are the same, and there's no reason to go to any of them. But yeah, I guess he must have had his eyes closed, his ears closed. He didn't taste anything. His mouth was closed. He didn't notice the different people, the different languages, the different religions, the different architecture. British colonial architecture here, very little, like none of that in Bangkok. I mean, mosques all over the place here in Kuala Lumpur. The call to prayer. Apparently, he didn't notice any of that. Hindu temples, Anyway, I could go on and on and on. And there's not much point. And not a big surprise, apparently he was badly disappointed by the Aquaria. And I was interested in that part of his video because I love aquariums. I was recently, I went through a journal that I wrote when I was in Taiwan. I went on a trip there down to the south, and I just stumbled across an aquarium, like an ocean-themed aquarium in the south of Taiwan, and I went there and I wrote about it in my journal. This was a long time ago, and I wasn't shooting video back in those days. But in my journal entry, I wrote and I went on and on and on about how amazing this aquarium was. I couldn't get enough of it. I spent the entire day at this aquarium, and then the next morning I woke up and I went for a ride on my scooter in the countryside, and then I just couldn't help myself. I went straight back to the aquarium and spent another day there. And I went to the very small aquarium in Port Dickson here in Malaysia. And again, like that aquarium in Port Dickson is not a big commercial tourist attraction. It's a government-run kind of a research facility, and they're there to protect marine, like the sea turtles, green sea turtles, things like that. But I mean, I love the place. I could spend hours in even the smallest aquarium. So I've always been curious about the one here in Kuala Lumpur. For some reason, I've never gone. I don't know why. I guess because I don't know why, but there's something here called the Aquaria, and I've never gone. So the fact that he went there, I thought, oh wow, like very few people go there. I don't know if I've ever seen it in a video before. His might have been the very first. So I started watching his video, and then he went through it. In his video, I saw amazing displays. I was very impressed. He showed in his video so many different species of marine life, big things like the manta rays, the sharks, little things, educational displays. I thought it was jammed full of attractions. I thought it was a pretty amazing place. And then he walked out of it and he did the same thing that he always does. He went, it was disappointing. I think he said he was in there for 30 minutes. He said it was too small. He dismissed it as too small. It's not really worth it. And I think he said he spent 30 minutes in there, and that was it. 30 minutes in the aquarium. He was disappointed. It was too small. But anyway, from what I saw, it looked really interesting. Well worth visiting. He does have this tendency to want to point out. He wants to ridicule things and find that to me that's kind of a British attitude. They love to make jokes, to take the piss. That sort of thing. So it's sort of a national trait, so you have to understand that. But the very first thing he showed at the Aquaria was that they had a display of meerkats. And again, if I went into the Aquaria expecting to see a lot of fish and sharks and squid and everything in the ocean, and the first thing I see is a desert or like a savanna display of meerkats, I might have a passing thought. It's like, oh, meerkats at an aquarium. That's interesting. But that would be drowned out completely by, oh, cool, meerkats. Because who doesn't love meerkats? Meerkats are amazing. So what's wrong with having, I would respond with joy and excitement. Wow, a meerkats display. And he responded with ridicule. It's like, what kind of a weird place is this? It's an aquarium? What, they think meerkats are fish? He's making a joke about it. But again, that's sort of the make a joke, ridicule approach that he tends to have, I think. But anyway, I thought it was a pretty interesting place. Another funny theme in these two videos is that Ben, in both videos, he never stopped complaining. He just complained about everything. But he knows in the back of his mind that as a YouTuber, the worst thing you can do is complain. People get very upset if you go to another country and you come across as complaining about that country. People will call you out on that behavior. So all through both videos, he kept complaining. He never stopped complaining, but after every time he complained, then he said, now I'm not complaining, but he had to say over and over again, I'm not complaining, but then he would go on to complain and complain and complain. And I've run into that myself. It's kind of a gray area because depending on the country you're going to, if you're going to a country that is a little bit rough around the edges, things are not going to be organized. You may not understand what's going on. There will be all kinds of problems, delays, misunderstandings. Things will go wrong. But then if you tell the story, this is what happened during my day, you're telling the story of 10 things that went wrong. So then someone can say to you, all you do is complain all the time. And then if someone says that about me, I honestly come back with with my opinion, which is, well, no, I wasn't really complaining at all. I'm just telling the story of what happened. And I think I'm justified in making that defense in my case, because I think, the way I talk about things, to me, they're funny, they're stories, they're adventures, and they're sort of expected. You go to a place like Sumatra, for example, and if you travel there on a little bit of a lower budget, well, things are going to happen that are going to make your life a little bit uncomfortable, and then you tell the story. But again, you're not complaining about it, you're just telling what happened. But in his case, in Ben's, he spun everything from what I could tell from the point of view of he's going there as it's a tourist attraction for him, and he's expecting it to be a certain way, that he's expecting everything to work for his convenience, and then he complains about it because of the way it affected him personally. That's how it always comes across. But then he always says, I'm not complaining. I'm not the guy who usually complains, so I'm not complaining." But he complains almost nonstop. When he's flying from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, he's already saying he doesn't have high hopes for Kuala Lumpur. He really likes Singapore. I didn't watch any of his videos from Singapore, but Singapore was his kind of place, which is understandable because he wants things to be clean and perfect and organized and wonderful. He wants a full-on, pleasurable, comfortable tourist vacation experience, and Singapore fit the bill. And now he's flying to Kuala Lumpur, and he's worried about the way it's going to be, because as he says, he didn't like Manila, he didn't like Bangkok, so he's probably not going to like Kuala Lumpur. And then when he's in Kuala Lumpur, he went to a hotel in Kampong Baru, and then he saw a man sleeping on the sidewalk. And you do see, if you go to certain neighborhoods in Kuala Lumpur, you do see quite a number of homeless. There's quite a large homeless population when you know where to look for them. And then he sort of filmed the guy, and then he commented on videos, "Oh, we're not off to a good start." So, like, the existence of the homeless guy sleeping on the sidewalk was an affront to Ben, because it's going to ruin his vacation, if you see what I mean. So he was like, right out of the gate, complaining that there was a homeless guy and it's going to ruin his vacation. It's like, oh, we're not off to a good start here. You see, so he sort of takes everything personally. He had a funny thing with the elevator. He rented a relatively expensive place up on the highest floor with an infinity pool and an exercise room. But then inside the elevator, it was padded. So it had all the big padding that you hang on hooks. And you do that, of course, when you're moving furniture in and out. And then it protects the walls of the elevator. But I guess he had never seen that before. So he stepped into the elevator and said, "Oh, what's going on with this?" And again, he took it as a personal affront that he's there for his holiday. He paid a lot of money to stay in this nice place. And now look at how ugly the elevator is. So it's ruining my experience of my vacation. And then he went to KLCC. And he got to, there's a very large intersection out in front of the Petronas Towers. It's quite a large one. And it has streets coming in at awkward angles. It's like 4 major streets coming in with sort of a roundabout. But then there's other streets coming in on angles with a lot of lights, a lot of pedestrian crossing lights, things like that. It's a little bit of a complicated intersection to figure out. At like rush hour, it can be quite busy for a pedestrian. But when he encountered that, again, he didn't seem to like it at all. Like, it really bothered him that this intersection existed. He just kept complaining about it. But to me, it looked fine. When he was at the Batu Caves, he did this thing where he held the camera up and he was talking about certain things, like the massive amounts of garbage here. It's filthy. And I looked in the video and I didn't really see any garbage anywhere. Someone left a comment on my video saying, well, they did see, when they were looking at the video, they did see some garbage. But I honestly didn't see any. I saw garbage cans, but I didn't actually see. But certainly, I didn't see garbage at the level that he was talking about. And then he talked about how the huge crowds of people here at Batu Caves. And I saw like 20 people, just a sprinkling of people in the background. So there was a lot of like extreme exaggeration. And when he was talking about this intersection, it was like, oh, you know, I nearly died 5 times crossing. And I'm looking in the video and I'm like, I don't know, it looks pretty organized to me. The red lights and green lights, the pedestrian crosswalk was working. Of course, you occasionally get a motorcycle here riding down the sidewalk. That's normal for Malaysia. It's normal all over Asia. So I didn't see what he was talking about. And then when he got to the Petronas Towers, he says, there are hundreds of guys trying to get you to pay them to take pictures of you. Incredible. Makes me want to curse. I'm not going to, but it really makes me want to curse. It's so uncivilized here. And again, hundreds of guys. I've been to the Petronas Towers in the evening when it's at its nicest and the lights are coming out. And if you go to the Saloma Link Bridge, going to Kampong Baru, you see the guys there also taking pictures for payment. And you see them at Petronas Towers. There's not hundreds of them. A scattering, 3 or 4 at the Saloma Link Bridge, 10 at Petronas Towers, maybe the entire KLCC complex, 20. I don't know how many there are, but there are not hundreds. And what's the big deal? They don't really bother you that much. I've been to these places and they don't come after me. They don't come up to me because I'm walking around with my GoPro. They know I'm not interested in a picture. And from what I've seen, these guys do a really nice job. They offer a really good product because they have these incredibly complex rigs. It's like a big frame where they mount a high-end, high-quality smartphone with all kinds of lights. And they have the exposure and the focus. They have everything dialed in perfectly. So when they take a picture of you with the Saloma Link Bridge or the Petronas Towers, and then you pay them, and they can send it to you right away, right? Because it's a digital picture on their smartphone, and you just give them your WhatsApp address or whatever, however they do it, and then you get a copy of it. I kind of looked over their shoulders from time to time. They take a nice picture, beautifully lit, nice, perfectly framed. It looks good, beautifully focused. They're offering what I think of as a pretty useful service, because you as a dumb, ordinary person, you're not going to get a picture like that. So what is the big deal? Like, it isn't a big deal at all. And then he went on and on about it to the point of saying, it's so uncivilized here, it really makes me want to curse. But I did not see anything that extreme going on. So yeah, travel with Ben is not going to be one of my favorite travel vloggers. Oh yeah, I do have some notes about his third video. I didn't realize that. So that's the one, a 40-minute international flight, Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. And yeah, that was a very strange video as well. He was complaining that he had to take 2 trains to get from the airport. And that really puzzled me, because he wanted to go to his condominium building in Kampong Baru, and he was at the airport, and he decided to take the KLIA express train. Because you can get from the airport by Grab, or you can take the express train, or you can take the airport bus. Right, those are your basically, or taxi. Those are your 4 options. And then, oddly enough, whenever he took the airport train, but then when he took the train, he talked about that like it was a big deal. Like, I could have taken a Grab car, but you guys know me. I like to get out there with the local people. I like to get deep into the local experience. So I'm going to take the and he called it the KLIA, or the CLIA. He didn't know that KLIA was the name of the airport. He thought KLIA was the name of the train. So he kept talking about how I'm going to take the KLIA, and he didn't realize it's actually the KLIA Express. But anyway, he was taking the express train as some sort of extreme local experience, which I thought was kind of odd. And then in the middle of it, he's on the train, I guess, and he was talking about how, well, in this train, he says, it only takes you to the central train station, and then you have to change to another train. And he went on, he's like, oh, it's so ridiculous that you have to do this. It was just such a weird attitude, because the airport train takes you from the airport to KL Central, which is the central transportation hub, downtown Kuala Lumpur, essentially. So basically, that's how you get into the city. And now that you're in the middle of the city, from there, you can do whatever you want. If you're staying in Brickfields, you can just walk to your hotel, or you can take a grab or a taxi, or you can hop in the subway, and you can take a local bus or the subway to get to your hotel. So he took the airport express train to KL Central, which lots of people do. But then in KL Central, to get to Kampong Baru, he went into the MRT, the LRT system, to take the train to Kampong Baru. And this really bothered him. He just said it was ridiculous. It was so stupid that he had to take 2 trains. Why isn't there just 1 train? And I'm wondering I have no idea how his brain works, because did he want an airport train to take him all the way to his hotel? I mean, that would be pretty rare. But he didn't seem to understand that the airport train took him downtown, and then after that, he's on his own. And now he's just getting into the subway system. Now he's getting into the public transportation network to take the local MRT, LRT to get to Kampong Baru, where his hotel was. But he was complaining that he had to take 2 trains. He called it ridiculous that they set it up like this. Very, very strange. So the third video, that was the one, travel day to Vietnam was a disaster. And you can imagine how that went. It was a travel day. And of course, a travel day for anybody, depending on circumstances, comes with challenges. And he ran into a bunch of challenges, but there was nothing in his experience that rose to the level of a disaster. And most of the things that happened that were an inconvenience could easily have been prevented by him if he had done a little bit of forethought, or kind of knew what he was doing. He started off at his hotel, and then he rode the LRT back to KL Central, and then he took the express train back to the airport. He still called it the KLIA, and I'm going to take the KLIA to the airport, not knowing that KLIA was the airport, which I was kind of amused by. And then he got to the airport, and he was sort of complaining that he had to check in online, and then I guess he was sort of annoyed by that, and then somebody from Air Asia or whoever told him that, well, that saves you saves you time. You don't have to wait in line to do it when you get to the airport. But of course, when you get to the airport now, you still have to drop off your bag, and then you might have to wait in line to drop off your bag. So he was complaining about that well, they told me I wouldn't have to wait in line, but look, I'm still waiting in line, because he has to drop off his bag. And he was sort of complaining about that. And then, he was in the airport. Yeah, almost everything was a little bit negative. He always had a negative, kind of a ridicule approach to everything. He passed by all the customs, the duty-free shops, and made a comment about, who buys any of that stuff? Who buys the big bottles of liquor and perfume and stuff like that? And a lot of people do. He wouldn't, I wouldn't, but a lot of people do. But he's in the airport, and then a key thing about his experience is that he said that on every travel day, what he wants to do is take all of his leftover money from that country and spend it all in the airport. So if he had leftover Malaysian, he called them ringlet. So he had leftover Malaysian ringlet, and then he went around the airport to see if he could spend it all. So he went to McDonald's and he had like a sausage McMuffin breakfast, spent some ringlet, and then he went to some shops and bought a bunch of chocolate. He basically spent all the money he had, and he ended up with 3 ringlet left over, and then he just sort of left it behind on a plant shelf for somebody to find as a fun discovery. And then so he spent all his Malaysian ringlet, got rid of it all. And then he did run into something that often takes me by surprise at KLIA as well, that he bought a bottle of water, and as he said, he didn't even open it. He was in the airport, he went through security, went through immigration, and then he figured, okay, I'm all done now. I just have to go to my boarding gate. So he bought a bottle of water, and he's holding the bottle of water, but then he went to his boarding area, and right before the boarding gates at KLIA, there's another security screening. And at that one, they say, oh, you can't have any liquids. And they took away his bottle of water. And I kind of gave him that one because I've run into that as well. And I think what I've learned over time is that when you go through immigration at KLIA, they have some x-ray machines there. So it feels like you're going through security, but you're not. That's not security, that's customs. And they just want you to take your carry-on bag and put it through the x-ray machine. You don't get searched. You're not being patted down or anything. It's only to look inside your bags, make sure you're not carrying massive amounts of contraband, customs stuff. So that's a customs screening. It's not security. But you think you've gone through security, and then you finally get to your boarding gate. That's where they have the security screening. And that's the real one, where you have to take off all of your metal, put everything into the bucket, and then you can't have any liquids. That's where they apply all the security rules. But most people who go through KLIA for the first time, this takes them by surprise. I remember ages ago, it took me by surprise because I had a flight to catch, and I'm at the airport, and I'm just hanging out near all the restaurants and all the cafes, having a coffee, waiting until the last minute to go to my boarding gate. And then I finally, I just got a few minutes to get there, and I get up and go there. And then I ran into security, and there was quite a large lineup, and it took me a long time to get through security. And because I didn't know that there was another security process to go through, it took me by surprise. But now, of course, I know about it, and now he didn't know about it either, so they took away his bottle of water, and he wasn't pleased about that. And I guess the flight wasn't the best flight ever because there were a lot of crying babies on the flight, that sort of thing. And then he lands in Nha Trang. He didn't go to Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi. He flew to Nha Trang in Vietnam, and he was complaining that the airport was 20 kilometers outside of the city. So now he's got to travel the 20 kilometers, and he was kind of like, 20 kilometers away. And again, I think a normal travel vlogger telling the story, you could tell that. You could say, oh yeah, actually it's 20 kilometers outside of the city, so I'm going to have to get a bus or something to get into the city. But Travel with Ben, he seemed to take it as a personal affront that the fact that the airport was 20 kilometers away was like getting in the way of his enjoyment of his vacation. He took it as a personal insult that, look what they've done to my holiday. And then he was going to take a shuttle bus, but he couldn't buy a ticket. And the way he told the story, it's like, well, I went up to the counter to buy a ticket, and they asked me for money. And as he said in his video, it's like, of course, I didn't have any. Like, I just arrived in the country, so I don't have any Vietnamese dong. I don't have any local currency. So how am I supposed to be able to buy a bus ticket? He took that again as kind of a personal, it's like, this place. Even before that, he was at the conveyor belt for luggage. And as soon as he got there, he talked on video and said, I've been waiting 20 minutes and it still hasn't come out my suitcase. And then the next segment of video, it was like, 30 minutes and I'm still waiting for my luggage. And then he also complained about how many people were at immigration, how many people were in the lineup. So for a guy saying that he never complains and he's not complaining, all he did was complain about everything. And then while he was waiting for his suitcase to appear, he was talking about all these money exchange counters. He counted 6 of them right beside the conveyor belts for luggage. He counted them like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at them, all these money exchange places, and they're all shouting out, money exchange, money exchange. He seemed to think this was really weird or really strange. It was something bizarre that he needed to point out. He says, look at all these places, and they're so eager, shouting out money exchange. Why are there so many money exchange places? And I found that kind of ironic, because in the next segment of video, he tried to buy a bus ticket, and lo and behold, he was in Vietnam, and they were asking for Vietnamese money. They were asking for money. So, well, you have to pay for the ticket, and we need money. And he was like, what? Oh, come on. I don't have any money. I just arrived. Because in his mind, he's going to go to an ATM when he gets downtown, of course, and that's when he gets money. How can they expect him to have money at the airport? And they told him, oh, we have an ATM here. And then the first ATM he went to was broken. And he took that as a personal affront. It's like, oh, of course it's broken. And then he tried to find another ATM, but I don't know how long he looked, but he couldn't find one. But then he remembered that he happened to have some US dollars squirreled away somewhere, left over from some, he got tips, I guess. He works on cruise lines, and he ended up with some US dollars. I think people gave him in tips or something. So then he remembered, I have US dollars. But instead of going to the money exchange place, he made fun of all these places, like, oh, look at all these weird money exchange places. Why are there so many of them? And then, of course, the reason is because you landed in a new country and you have to get money in that country. Again, in my case, if I were flying to Vietnam, I tend to get at least a little bit of money in advance, because I don't like to have a lot of hassles when I land. So if I'm here in Kuala Lumpur, which I did do when I flew to Vietnam, I get some Vietnamese dong here when it's convenient. You know, there is this idea that your exchange rate, it would be better in Vietnam, so you're going to lose a little bit of money if you change money here. But I mean, how much are you really going to lose? And it's more than made up for by having some Vietnamese currency ready to go. You land at the airport, and then you can start paying people in their money, which makes sense. Well, when I go back to Sumatra, I'm going to have Sumatran currency, so that when I land there, I've got money to pay the driver to take me to my hotel, to buy something to eat, to pay when I get to the hotel. So that's kind of what I do, but he doesn't do that. But then he went back to the shuttle bus people and said, well, I've got some US dollars. Can I pay with that? And then they said, well, they did the calculations and said, yeah, about $4 US is the equivalent amount for the Vietnamese dong. So he managed to pay in US dollars for the bus. And then he's on the bus, and then he kept complaining when he was on the bus because he was looking out the window. And I think he was thinking about how it's 20 kilometers away, and looking out the window, it was raining, and he was probably thinking about his whole money problem, how he didn't have any money. And this all got back to him being in the airport in Malaysia. He had like 60, 40, 50, or 60 ringgit, and there are money changers at the airport in Kuala Lumpur. And his goal, he said, is to always just get rid of all of his money. And what he could have done, of course, was taken his 60 ringgit, gone to an exchange counter and said, can I change these into Vietnamese dong? He would have gotten the equivalent in Vietnamese dong. And then when he landed at the airport, he would have enough to get on the shuttle bus and take him downtown. It's such an obvious, natural thing to do, and which he did not do. And then he ended up blaming the airport for being so poorly organized that he was inconvenienced, that they expected him to have money. It's like, oh, what a ridiculous place. And Malaysia is so ridiculous because I had to take 2 trains, one from the airport, and then I had to take another train, the local subway train. So this inconvenienced him as well. I'm being very mean to Ben here, I realize. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny that he kept insisting that he wasn't complaining, and yet all he did was complain. Yeah, he also complained that this was something new in the airport in Malaysia, where he went up to immigration to leave, and he handed over his passport, and then the immigration officer looked at his passport and then asked him, say, oh, like when you came into Malaysia, did you use the self-check-in immigration machine, or did you talk to an immigration officer like this? Because apparently, I didn't know this either, in Malaysia, they have these new machines, you can scan your passport yourself. And if you enter the country scanning your passport, you have to also scan your passport when you leave. So if you use the machine coming in, you have to use the machine going out. And if you come in dealing with an immigration officer, then you have to leave using an immigration officer. You can't mix and match the two procedures. And I guess the guy looked in his passport and there was no entry stamp. So it was like, oh, it looks like you must have used the machine to come in. And then Ben, he said he didn't remember. He's like, I don't remember. How can I be expected to remember that? And it was like, I think he'd been in Malaysia for 5 days. And for me, if I came into an airport and there was a machine where I can scan my passport to go through immigration, I'm going to remember that experience. Planet Doug, I'm going to make an hour-long video about just doing that one thing. So I can't imagine how he cannot even remember. But then he was annoyed by this, and his reaction to this, he says on his video, talking about the immigration officer, like, just look at my passport. Like, why should I have to be inconvenienced by going through the machine? Just look at my passport, do your job. So he was sort of complaining about that as well. And then, I wrote some quotes from his day where he said he wasn't complaining, and these are a bunch of quotes from his video. I swear this day, it's not my day today. Frustrating day, let me tell you. Frustrating, what a day. And then he's in Nha Trang, and it's raining, and he says, I'm supposed to be going to the beach. What is this? And then he's trying to find his hotel, but he can't find it. And I've been walking around for 20 minutes. Look at this traffic. I'm so over this. This is why I go on cruises. It's so much easier. And then he's finally found the street where his hotel was located. And then he's looking at the signs. And then he says, my hotel doesn't have a sign there, but it is down here. God, what a hassle. And he says, I think I'm going to change my channel name to Cruises with Ben. Only cruises, because this is not fun. This is frustrating. Then he goes out in Nha Trang to get money from an ATM. Then the ATM was out of service. And then he says, this ATM is temporarily out of service. Of course it is. Of course it is. I'm so over this day. I just fell back there and nearly broke my foot. I'm so over it. So anyway, for a guy who never complains, he does a lot of complaining. And of course I added some inflection there. He tried to laugh a little bit more than I was laughing in my delivery. So I'm not being entirely fair to poor Ben. But I even left a comment on that video because he was talking about how he couldn't find the hotel. And he said on his map, it's supposed to be here, but it's actually not located there. And he put a screenshot of a digital map that showed how the pin for the hotel was in the wrong location. And of course, me being me, I immediately went on to Google Maps and I typed in the name of his hotel. And for me, it showed up in the right place. Like using Google Maps, it was the Time Hotel in Nha Trang. And on Google Maps, it's in the right location. The pin is accurate. So I was curious because on his map, it is in the wrong place. That's why he couldn't find his hotel. And I was curious, well, what map is he using? And then he did reply to my comment and he said he was using Apple. So he has an iPhone. And on Apple Maps, the location pin for that hotel was in the wrong place. But on Google Maps, it was in the right place. So that's why he couldn't find the hotel. So that is Travel with Ben. There's probably half a dozen other things in this video that I wanted to comment on, but I think I've gone on long enough about this poor fellow. Oh, here's another one. Malaysia has some of the worst sidewalks I've seen in my life. Jeez. He did not have a good time in Kuala Lumpur. But as we all know, Kuala Lumpur is exactly the same as Bangkok. It's exactly the same as Manila. These cities are all identical. So anyway, spoiler alert from someone who's been to all three. No, they are nowhere near the same. They are all quite different. But maybe again, you have to get away from the Petronas Towers and KLCC and the skyscrapers of Manila and the skyscrapers of Bangkok. You got to get out of those neighborhoods, and maybe you'll stumble across the fact that these cities are actually, just a little bit different from each other. I love science fiction of all types, and I love stories that have a little bit of a Twilight Zone, mysterious sort of X-Files quality to them. And I don't know how I missed it in the past. For all I know, I stumbled across this movie a long time ago, but I don't remember. But I just watched this film called The Signal. Came out in 2014. I don't know the names of most of the players who made the film, like the writers and directors and cinematographers and all that kind of thing. And even the actors, for the most part, are kind of unknowns to me, except for Lawrence Fishburne. He has a role in it that's very reminiscent of The Matrix, of his role in The Matrix in a way. But yeah, I think a lot of what is enjoyable about this movie, The Signal, comes in the way of surprises, of learning things about, like learning the mystery. You're peeling back layers of this mystery, layer upon layer. And that's what keeps you watching the movie, is to figure these things out. So in terms of talking about the movie, spoilers would be pretty important if you're going to watch the movie. You don't want any spoilers, so if you want to watch The Signal at all, I would just go watch it. Don't listen to anything I have to say from this point on, because I'm going to spoil the movie, of course. So yeah, that's my spoiler warning. Now I'm going to talk about the movie a little bit. And it's essentially an alien abduction film where we have our heroes, Nick, Jonah, and Haley, and they're on a road trip going across the country, and they're sort of hackers as well. The two guys, Nick and Jonah, they know a lot about computers. They're in university, and some other hacker appeared in their life, kind of breaking into servers, like university servers and things like that. And Nick and Jonah were getting blamed for this, and now they're tracing the signals from this other hacker to go find him. And they track the signal into the middle of a desert somewhere in Nevada or someplace like that. And then the mystery really kicks off, and they find an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, go down into the basement. They leave Haley, the girl, in the car, and while Nick and Jonah are down in the basement investigating, they hear Haley start to scream. They come running upside, and then you get this flash of Haley, shoom, like a beam of light, and then she flies up into the air. So that is your first clue. Oh, okay, alien abductions, spaceships, something like that is going on. And then we jump into the future with Nick waking up in a hospital bed, and he is apparently inside some kind of a government facility where they are caring for him. And over time, he's basically gets the story from Lawrence Fishburne that they found him. They just found him in the middle of nowhere, and then they brought him here, and now they're helping him recover from this experience. And part of the backstory of Nick is he has some sort of a health problem. I don't think they ever say what it is, but his legs don't really work. And he used to be a star athlete, And then now when we see him in the movie, has a lot of trouble walking and controlling his limbs, and he walks on crutches. And then he eventually sees, when he's in this hospital complex with Lawrence Fishburne interrogating him and running him through all these mysterious tests, he discovered that his legs have been amputated and they've been replaced with prosthetics, and it looks like alien technology. So now our understanding of the situation is that Nick and Haley and Jonah were all abducted by aliens. The aliens ran tests on them, and as part of whatever they did to them, they cut off his legs and replaced them with alien artificial legs, and then dumped them back on Earth when they were done with them. And now Lawrence Fishburne is part of some secretive government organization that is trying to figure out what happened to them. And of course, Lawrence Fishburne and all the other people are wearing hazmat suits, and they're very worried about contamination, alien bacteria, viruses, whatever they could get from these people. And they also seem to be worried about their legs. And over time, you get this impression that this has happened in the past, and that the humans who have been experimented on by the aliens suddenly have powers of some kind. And they're keeping Nick under control through drugs. So you get this suspicion building up that in fact they're using an IV to put drugs into his system so that he can't control his legs. And you eventually learn that his legs are bionic and they're actually super powerful, and turn him into a kind of Superman because his legs are so powerful, and they're keeping him under control with drugs. And he kind of figures that out, and the IV gets pulled out, and then over time he gains control of his legs, and using his superpowered legs he can kick down the door of this laboratory and he can fight, and he's super powerful, and then he escapes from the facility and goes out into the world. And now he's trying to escape from the government forces that are trying to capture him again. And again, all this time you're under the impression that he's on the planet Earth, and that the US government is holding him inside this secret facility. And then through clues we find out that they are inside Area 51, where all the alien spaceships and things like that are being held. But then more mysterious things happen, more things pile on, and you start to think that, there's something even more weird going on. Because the whole time I was watching the movie, I accepted the premise: alien abduction, Lawrence Fishburne working for the US government. I accepted all of this, but the things Lawrence Fishburne was doing and the things he was saying, the way he was interacting with Nick, just didn't add up. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. It wasn't logical. It's like, well, why are you doing this? And to be honest, this idea is where the movie kind of fell apart for me, because I'm pretty hardcore when it comes to a movie's internal logic. And you can make a movie as insane, as crazy. You can invent wild worlds. I can go with you as far as you want to go, but the internal logic of that world has to make sense. And in this case, we get to the end of the movie and we discover that Lawrence Fishburne is not human. He's actually an alien android. Like, he's basically an alien robot with a human face. And in fact, they're not even on the planet Earth anymore. Everybody, this whole thing, Area 51, the government facility, everything is actually on an alien spaceship, a massive alien spaceship, and we see it docking at an alien world at the end of the movie. So this entire time, Lawrence Fishburne was an alien, and then Nick and Noah, Nick and Jonah and Haley, the three humans, they were never on Earth. They were always on this alien spaceship. and then eventually Nick uses his superpowered legs to run at supersonic speed and break through a wall at the end of Area 51. And when he breaks through the wall, he sees the spaceship. He knows he's on an alien craft and he's at an alien world. So that's supposed to be the big reveal that explains everything that's been happening up until that point. So overall, yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I love alien abduction movies. I love science fiction. I love movies that take a big swing, like they're going for big ideas. And there's a thematic quality to the three young people, like what they're going through emotionally in their personal lives has a connection to what's happening with the alien abduction. There's a link there, which I really appreciate that quality. So I enjoyed the movie from that point of view. The visuals are amazing. I love the alien prosthetics. I mean, Nick, he has alien legs, like $6 million man legs. But then his friend, Jonah, he has alien arms. So they basically amputated his arms and gave him basically incredible Hulk arms. And they are so powerful, they can smash anything, and he's super, super strong. And so those visuals are very exciting, very interesting. We never do learn what happened to Haley. Haley has an implant in her spine. So they were sort of messing with her brain, I think, messing with her nervous system. She didn't seem to have any physical implants like the guys did. So I don't think we ever learned exactly what they did to Haley. So for all those reasons, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. It's a movie I would even watch again because it's the kind of movie where you can go back. Now that you know the real story, you can pick up on little clues here and there. And I thought the characters were interesting. I thought they were well done. But when you got to the end of the movie and you realized, okay, they were on an alien spaceship the whole time, Lawrence Fishburne was an alien, then their behavior didn't make any sense to me. Like at the beginning, when we were thinking Lawrence Fishburne's character was a human, the way he was talking with Nick didn't make a lot of sense to me, because it seemed to me that all he had to do was tell him the truth. And yet, if he had told him the truth, Nick would have cooperated with him. Like if, again, you got to stick with me here, if this really was Area 51, Lawrence Fishburne really was a human working for the US government, then he would have said to Nick, oh, Nick, yes, you were abducted by aliens. We found you in the desert, so we took you here, and while you were with the aliens, they cut off your legs and they attached prosthetic legs to you. And then, show him his new legs and say to him, okay, we have to keep you isolated for now because we have to think about contamination, bacteria, viruses, any sort of alien diseases that you might spread. So please, please help us with this. We need to keep you isolated in this hospital, and we want to learn about this alien technology, and we want to learn whether it's dangerous or not. So that would have been the normal human way of talking to him, but he never did. So it ended up being an antagonistic relationship where Nick came to the conclusion that he was being held prisoner, and then when he found out that his legs had been amputated, he freaked out and he learned his legs were superpowered. So now he's fighting with Lawrence Fishburne's character, and he escapes, and we have all that excitement, all the chase scenes, all that kind of stuff. So the way Lawrence Fishburne behaved as a human didn't make any sense to me if he was a human scientist. So I was like, well, that's weird. So now we learn he's an alien, and an alien robot, an alien android of some kind. It was like, that's why he didn't behave like a human. That makes sense to me. But then if you think about it, well, if he was an alien robot, his behavior didn't make any sense either. Like nothing they were doing made any sense to me. I couldn't figure out the logic of, okay, now we understand Lawrence Fishburne was an alien himself, and they're testing Nick. They're basically abducting humans, giving them alien prosthetics. Why? Like, why would they do that? And then if they're doing it to see whether humans can adapt to alien technology, I get that. But then why are they keeping them drugged so that they can't use their alien legs? Why do they keep his alien legs a secret from him? And then when they go out into Area 51 in the desert, we see some other humans, and then the robot, Lawrence Fishburne, the android, every single human that Nick comes in contact with, he shoots and kills them. And I don't know why. So I like the way all the testing, what he told Nick, didn't tell Nick, shooting the other humans, nothing in the movie made sense to me from any point of view. If Lawrence Fishburne is a human, his behavior didn't make sense to me. And then we learned he's actually an alien. Oh, okay. But then as an alien, none of his behavior made sense to me. I didn't get it. I don't get what they were doing and why they did anything. What was the point of the charade? I didn't understand the logic from the alien point of view, the logic from the human point of view. But even setting all of that aside, I still enjoyed the movie from the human drama angle. It was exciting. The cinematography was interesting. The mystery was interesting. Peeling back the layers of the onion of the mystery, I thought that was a lot of fun. In the end, it didn't make any sense to me, which was disappointing. I wanted things. The big reveal at the end should have explained everything. Should have been like, oh, that's what was going on all this time. They were aliens. They're on an alien spacecraft. Okay, now it all makes sense. And yet the big reveal made even less sense to me. Maybe I'm just being blind. I'm being a dummy. But I went online and I was reading about it and I was asking questions and trying to figure out, okay, if they're aliens, why did they do this and why did they do that and what was the meaning of this? What was the point of this? I don't understand it, but nothing I read made any sense to me. But anyway, yeah, that's the movie The Signal from 2014. I recommend it if you're into that kind of movie, science fiction, alien abduction, mystery. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Landman. I'm finally watching Landman. The name of this show has come up a lot. I was watching some other shows like The Day of the Jackal, and I talked about them in a podcast. And then people were recommending, say, oh, if you enjoy this and you enjoy this, you'll probably enjoy this one. And it was spelled out Landman. And every time I saw it online, I did see, I don't think I watched the trailer for it. A long time ago, I saw the trailer for it, and I started watching it, but like in the first few seconds, I realized I would enjoy it, so I just turned it off. I don't want to watch the trailer. I don't want to know anything in advance. So I watched just enough of the trailer to figure out whether I would like the show or not, and once I decide, oh, I'm going to watch it, then I turn off the trailer. So I never heard the name pronounced, but I kind of looked at it, and I thought it would be like plural, like the show would be called Landman, something like that. But then I realized, oh no, it's man, Landman. It didn't make any sense to me, but now that I'm watching it, they pronounce it like they really hit land hard, like Landman. It just, I don't know, it just doesn't really roll off my tongue for some reason, but that's the name of the show, Landman. And this is coming from it comes from a podcast. It came out in 2024, one season so far, starring Billy Bob Thornton, and the whole thing was the creation of Taylor Sheridan, and that's going to be important in a minute. But yeah, Billy Bob Thornton is amazing. He's a great actor. His season of Fargo is amazing. I love that so much. I love him in everything he's ever done. And yeah, he's good in Landman, and he is Landman in the film. And I guess in the oil industry, in certain, I guess maybe some parts of the oil industry in the United States are a bit more the Wild West than other areas. If there's smaller oil companies and there might be a lot of crime going on there, drug running with the Mexican cartels, a lot of the people that they hire may have criminal records, and there's like a lot of shady stuff, and it's a tough world. And in order to navigate that world and run an oil company, you need a fixer. You need a tough guy who knows how to deal with drug runners, with corrupt police, with criminals, with the army, with senators, with American political corruption. You need a guy who knows how to operate. You need a fixer, a tough guy who knows how to get things done and isn't afraid of getting his hands dirty. And I guess that guy is called the Landman. And in this movie, or in this TV series, Billy Bob Thornton's character, Billy, no, not Billy, that's from the other show that I watched. What is his name in this show? I should make sure I get his name correct. Tommy Norris. So Billy Bob Thornton is playing Tommy Norris. Demi Moore has a small role as Cammie Miller. Demi Moore is really good in this. I watched The Substance, the big movie that she's very well known for now, and she looks like Demi Moore, sounds like Demi Moore in The Substance, but in this TV series, she puts on a Southern accent, I believe. Again, terrible with accents, but to me, her Southern accent sounds amazing. She looks like a completely different person, and it's a very small role. I'm kind of surprised that someone as famous as Demi Moore would be willing to take like a small character role. I really admire that. But she's really good in this. She plays the wife of Monty Miller, who's the owner of the oil company, and he's played by John Hamm. And I guess the podcast that it's based on is hosted by Christian Wallace. So because it's a podcast, I'm hoping it's accurate. I think that's my main takeaway from this show. Well, my main takeaway is it's good. It's a good show. It's exciting. It's fun. It's interesting. Great characters. You learn a lot about a world, the oil world, that I don't know anything about. So it's very good from that point of view. But a lot of that does hinge on this idea that it's accurate. And I don't know. I mean, if someone gave me a TV show about the oil industry, like Dallas, the classic from the 70s, I guess. We all grew up with Dallas. That was our oil industry show. And you could give me any kind of show about the oil industry and say to me, this is how the oil industry operates. I would have to believe you, because I don't know. I don't know what's true and what isn't true. But you're watching Landman, and it's very exciting and very interesting. But I do wonder from time to time, is this anywhere close to reality? Okay, this is pretty extreme storytelling. Is this anything like how it really is? But because the show is based on a podcast, I have to assume that the podcast honestly tells the story of the oil industry. Podcasts aren't in the business of Hollywood. They're not in the business of making things up. So if the show Landman is based on a podcast about the oil industry, I mean, that gives me an idea that it's probably pretty accurate. So that makes it quite interesting to me. So yeah, it's a good show. The one thing I'll say about it, though, because it is a Taylor Sheridan production, it is like catnip for men. It's a show for men. It's like a fantasy for men, and I can feel myself being manipulated by the show. And Taylor Sheridan is very good at making products like this. I mean, he was an actor in Sons of Anarchy, and it's got a little bit of flavor like that. It's sort of like giving us a fantasy world where men can be men, and you can be tough, and you can do whatever you want and say whatever you want. And of course, in the real world, things don't work that way. I mean, this is the world of movies, and this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, of course, when it comes to media, where in a movie or a TV show, you always have the scene where the hero stands up to the bully, and then he stands up to the bully and then punches him in the head, and the bully is knocked unconscious, and the good guy won, and the bully never bothers you again, sort of thing. That's Hollywood. In the real world, as we see today more often than not, in the United States or Canada, and in any place that has the rule of law, you punch somebody and knock them unconscious, you're getting charged with assault. People don't really punch people as much as they do in movies, because in real life, you actually punch somebody, it's being caught on video, and then you are being charged with assault, and you may or may not be going to jail. And in the real world, you take on a bully, you may get the upper hand the first time you fight the bully, but the bully doesn't go away. In Hollywood, they go away all the time. You punch them once, they never come back. But in real life, the bully just gets a bunch of his friends together and they wait in the dark until they track you down alone, and then they just beat the crap out of you. That is what bullies do. If you know, they're not going to go away because you punched them once in the school cafeteria. They're just going to be waiting for you outside with 5 of their friends, and then they're just going to, just beat you half to death. That is what bullies do. That's what happens in real life. And then, so there are consequences to your actions in the real world, but a TV show like Landman shows somebody like Billy Bob Thornton. He's a tough guy. And again, it kind of gets to me, these shows. I'm a bit of I guess I like to tell stories, right? I go to do laundry here. That's my big adventure of my life, going to the laundromat. That's as adventurous as my life ever gets. And I can turn going to the laundromat into a 1-hour story about everything that happened at the laundromat, the struggle of washing clothes. That's an hour, it's an hour-long story. So, if I go to do laundry and I meet up with a friend for coffee the next morning, I talk his ear off for 20 minutes and I tell him about going to do laundry. But here we have Billy Bob Thornton's character, Tommy, in Landman. The show opens with him tied up in a chair with zip ties, with a hood over his head, and there's these drug dealers. A Mexican drug cartel has basically kidnapped him, and they punch him. He's got a thing over his head, and he gets punched in the head, and somebody gets killed. The leader of the drug cartel comes in with a gun, shoots one of his henchmen in the head, kills him dead, threatens Billy Bob Thornton. He was going to kill him and beat him to death and kill his family and burn all the usual stuff that Mexican cartel guys threaten to do and usually end up doing. And then the scene ends and the drug guys go away, and Billy Bob Thornton just sort of pulls the sack off his head. He lights up a cigarette, and that's just the day in the life of a landman. And then he goes back to his house where he's living with these other, oil guys. And then these other oil guys say to him, "Hey, how was your day, Tommy?" And he's like, "Oh, it was okay, normal kind of day." Like, he never even mentions it. He's that tough that he's kidnapped by a Mexican drug cartel, beaten, threatened with a gun, and then he goes back to the house, and he doesn't even mention it. It's like, I don't even need to bring it up, right? Like, if that happened to me, I'd be talking about it for the rest of my life. But it's that kind of a world. And then we have another scene that really stuck out in my mind. It's actually Tommy's son, which I don't think we know at the beginning that it's Tommy's son, but he's a brand new employee in the oil fields. It's his first day on the job. And we can tell right from the beginning that he's not a typical oil worker. Like, the typical oil workers are all ex-convicts, drug dealers, really bad, tough, kind of macho kind of men. And this guy, this new guy, he's kind of thin, He's not big and muscly. He's a thin guy. He's very soft-spoken. He's gentle. We're not quite sure he's intelligent yet, but you're getting hints that, okay, he's probably a bookish kind of guy. He's intelligent. And he's not a typical hero, because on his first day on the job, he really doesn't stand up for himself. All the oil workers just make fun of him, ridicule him, tease him, and he doesn't really fight back. And then they make him climb up a huge tower, a tall tower. And in the sequence, this kid, he's terrified. Like, he's scared to death to go all the way to the top of the ladder, and he actually slips and he falls. But he is in a harness, so he isn't killed or anything. He is injured pretty badly. He hurts his hand pretty badly. But, and it kind of surprised me that they showed him to be so scared, because, I mean, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not surviving in this world of the oil rigs. But you send me up that ladder, I'm climbing up the ladder, no problem. Sure, it's high, but I'm a logical person. I'm going up a 30-foot ladder or a 300-foot ladder. It's all the same to me. I'm not scared of a ladder. You tell me. If it was me in that situation, my first day on the job, and then the guy said to me, they play a trick on me and say, oh, we need you to climb up that ladder and fix this valve that doesn't exist. I'm like, oh, okay. I click into the harness and I just go up the ladder to the top. I'm not going to be scared climbing the ladder. Why would I be? It's a ladder. You hold on to it, you're not going to fall. I've gone up ladders, lots of ladders in my life. Anyway, so I was surprised that this guy was portrayed as being so scared even of going up a ladder. They made him out to be more of a wimp than I thought they would do. But then later on in the show, there was a point where his other oil workers were angry with him, and they threatened him with a gun. They pulled a gun and a knife on him, I think. Well, they pulled at least a gun on him. And then our bookish, skinny kid, who's scared of ladders, turns out he's like an all-American wrestler, and he knows jiu-jitsu. So he delivers like a perfect double leg takedown. Guy threatening him with a gun, he disarms him, takes him down with a double leg takedown, takes his back, throws in a rear naked choke, and sends him unconscious. So he's a pretty tough kid. Like, he may not weigh 250 pounds, he may not be covered in muscles, but he knows MMA. He was an all-American wrestler at university, and he knows jiu-jitsu, and he throws on a rear naked choke. And I find that kind of interesting, because I follow MMA myself. It's the only sport that I follow. I'm kind of losing interest in it these days for reasons I won't get into. The sport seems to be losing its way, let's put it that way. But I know about MMA, rear naked chokes, double leg takedowns, arm bars. I know the terminology of this world a little bit. I can't do any of these things. I just watch it. I don't do it. But then the funny thing is that now that MMA has become popular, you see jiu-jitsu in movies all over the place, and you never ever saw them before. So now we even see, like, if there's an action movie that takes place in the Middle Ages, like centuries ago, and now we've got two men having a fight scene, you suddenly see them using rear naked chokes back in the 1700s, right? Because these rear naked choke is the new way to fight. Back in the old days, when I was growing up, 70s and 80s, any action movie, everybody's using Bruce Lee moves. We think of a really tough fighter, they use kicks like Bruce Lee, karate chops. And then if we got a guy, we're trying to show that he's a tough fighter, they use kicks and karate chops. But now, in all of these movies, even women going like martial arts kind of women who are fighters in movies, they're using rear naked chokes to take down giant men. And you suddenly see a rear naked choke everywhere. Like I said, go back to the 1300s, there's going to be a fight scene. And And you're going to see a rear naked choke and an arm bar, and they're going to be tapping out, because they're using all of these MMA and jiu-jitsu techniques now in all the movies. But anyway, in Landman, this kid throws up a really nice rear naked choke, and he does it right as well. A lot of these movies, they say it's a rear naked choke, but the technique is all wrong. They don't do it properly. But I think he did it properly in Landman. But anyway, I'm just saying that this TV show presents a little bit of a fantasy world for men, where men can be tough and say what's on their mind with no consequences at all. And I can feel it that they're manipulating me from that point of view. They're feeding me this fantasy world. And I know that it's a fantasy world, and yet I can't resist it. So I kind of enjoy it from that point of view. I don't know how many women would enjoy this show. And of course, the women in this show are quite something as well. And that's putting it mildly. Tommy's wife and his daughter are really quite something. And his wife is played by an actress I know well. I don't know her name. I'm gonna get her name wrong, but I know her from the TV show Heroes long ago. And she's a very attractive woman. And in Heroes, and she's still an extremely attractive woman today, a lot of years later. And that's the character she's playing in Landman, where she's an attractive woman who knows she's attractive and works very hard to keep up her physical condition and her looks. And that's her whole identity, is her looks, basically. And yeah, she's a fun character. But something I noticed, though, when I was watching the latest episode last night over dinner, and when she was on screen, the music they were playing, I swear it was the theme music from Heroes. Because one thing I remember from Heroes really clearly is how much I love the theme music from Heroes. I love the show Heroes. It's one of my favorite shows. And I remember this character so clearly and the music from Heroes. And whenever she shows up in Landman, there's a hint of the theme music from Heroes playing in the background. I think it is, and I am pretty sure they did that on purpose, but I'd like to know whether they did or not. But yeah, I'm burning through the first season. There's only one season so far, 10 episodes, and I'm burning through them. It's one of these shows that just has a cliffhanger at the end. You have to watch the next episode to find out what happens next. And yeah, I wish there were 5 seasons that I could burn through. I think they would be very interesting. Yeah, Landman, Planet Doug, thumbs up, recommended, but with a pinch of, you have to understand what kind of a show it is. And again, I do wonder how much of it is real in terms of the oil industry and how it works. And again, getting into this male fantasy business, I forgot to mention this, it's an important part of the show. There is this idea that these oil guys are old-fashioned. So they come from the pre-woke world, right? So the United States has been taken over by woke cancel culture. That whole idea is embedded in the United States and Canada these days. So now there's a lot of situations where we have Tommy, played by Billy Bob Thornton, rough and tough oil man, and then they send in a lawyer, and he has to work with the lawyer, and then the lawyer is a young woman fresh out of university, and she comes into this world with all of the woke ideas. So when he meets Billy Bob Thornton, he calls her, I think, like lady or something, or uses some sort of a term of endearment referring to the fact that she's a woman. And then the lawyer really just tears into him because he had the audacity to notice that she's a woman and refer to her gender. How dare you mention my gender? That's sexist. And he's like, sorry, I was just being, in his world, he was just being polite. Like noticing that she's a woman offended her because she's coming from the woke culture. So we have all of these scenes where she brings in all these woke ideas where even the oil industry automatically is evil. That oil, big oil, is destroying the environment and they're evil. And it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction that wind and solar are good, oil and nuclear are bad. That's kind of the standard knee-jerk feeling about these things. So she comes into this world with those ideas. She works for the oil industry, but she has this idea that the oil industry is evil. And that sets up a lot of fun scenes where Billy Bob Thornton gets to lecture her about the reality that solar and wind power is not as clean as you think it is. And then oil industry is not as evil as you think it is. And then he gets to like lecture her a lot. And then I think that appeals to a lot of men too. We're kind of like, yeah, you know. And I can kind of relate to a lot of that because it's something I've been around my whole life. And I do like this idea that things are not always as they seem. So that in the environmental movement, you get a lot of opinions and attitudes based on feelings. And then the feelings may not match reality. So like a simple example, for example, you might go to a cafeteria and they're using plastic cutlery, plastic forks and spoons, and then you think, oh, this is terrible for the environment, plastic, and you can organize a protest and you can demand that they stop using disposable plastic cutlery. And then the university cafeteria, whatever it is, they give in to the protesters and they say, okay, we'll put in place real cutlery. But then you might think, oh, that's better for the environment. But if you really start breaking down the numbers, is it really better for the environment? Because real cutlery, stainless steel, where does the stainless steel come from? Comes from mines. Now you're mining steel, you're smelting steel, you're making these things, and now you've got reusable cutlery, okay, but what was the environmental impact of making that cutlery? And now they have to wash it every single day. So now you need hot water. What is making the hot water? Well, gas heaters, electricity. So now you got to produce all this energy to boil the water to clean the cutlery every day. And then you need soap. So now you're adding detergent into the environment because you have to wash this steel cutlery every day. And you have to have a washing machine. The washing machine has to be built. Now you need a factory and it's built out of steel. And then how much damage to the environment is caused by making washing machines? Do you see what I mean? It's like switching from plastic to steel could be good for the environment, but it's a case-by-case situation. You don't know. For all you know, because you switched to stainless steel cutlery, could have had a worse impact on the environment than if you continued using plastic. You see what I mean? And everything I've ever come across in my life in the environmental movement, most of it seems to be based on feelings, not necessarily on facts. And if you dive into the facts, well, you might learn a few things. And in Landman, we've got this lawyer from the woke university culture who thinks like wind power is clean and better. And there's one scene where Billy Bob Thornton's character says, okay, let me show you something. And they get in his truck and he drives her to these wind turbines, massive wind turbines, a field of them. And of course, the lawyer is looking at them approvingly, going, this is what we need. We need this. This is better than oil. And then Billy Bob Thornton gets to educate her and says, well, you know what? You know who runs these? And she's like, oh, I'm sure some wonderful environmental green movement. He's like, no, we do. These are oil industry wind turbines because we need wind turbines to produce the electricity to run the pumps to get the oil out of the ground because there's no grid here. So he knows a lot about the wind turbines, and he talks about, it's like, how, like, do you know what kind of a cement pad we have to build to make one of these things? And he's like, I don't know. And he goes on about, we need 18,000 tons of cement for every one of these things. And to make that 18,000 tons of cement, we need this much oil and this much electricity, and we do this much damage to the environment, and these huge holes in the ground disrupt this entire ecosystem. And he says, do you know how big these things are and how much factory and oil is used to make one of these wind turbines, and on and on and on and on. So his basic point is these wind turbines are not automatically better than oil. Like, they could be in a certain situation, but you gotta look at the facts, and the woke culture and wind is better than oil. The knee-jerk feeling is not. You gotta go deeper than your feeling about it. It may look clean because it's just being driven by the wind, but it's not necessarily the whole picture. So again, it kind of appeals to, And then in that same scene, the lawyer is standing there kind of with a stunned look on her face, like, oh, like she's just learned something she wasn't aware of. And then she hears a rattle, and there's a rattlesnake right at her feet. And then she's like so scared she can't even move. And then Billy Bob Thornton, he's back at the truck already, and then she starts screaming for help. And then Billy Bob Thornton is like, hey, and he's asking her, what kind of a snake? Like, how big is it? And then, do you hear a rattle? Like, he's trying to figure out, okay, what kind of a snake is it that she sees? And she's like, yeah, it's rattling. And then, as far as Billy Bob Thornton is concerned, it's no big deal. You're 10 feet away from a rattlesnake. You just move away from the rattlesnake. You're fine. So he's coming at it from a macho, real-world experience. He's seen hundreds of rattlesnakes in his lifetime. They're not a big deal. But now we have this university student who is so arrogant, thinks she knows everything because she just graduated from university, and now she's so terrified of a rattlesnake she can't even move. And there's such a funny scene, I love that scene so much, where she suddenly starts screaming to Billy Bob Thornton because the snake starts moving towards her. And she's like, what do I do? What do I do? The snake, it's moving towards me. And then Billy Bob Thornton, he shouts back, well, yeah, I understand why the snake is moving toward you. What I don't understand is why you're not moving away from the snake. It's like one of the best lines in movie history, I thought. And I know the whole thing is a setup. It's designed to appeal to me, like I'm identifying with Billy Bob Thornton. That's a rattlesnake and you're 10 feet away from it. Just walk away from the rattlesnake. It's just common sense. And he's like, I understand why the rattlesnake might be moving toward you. What I don't understand is why you're not moving away from the rattlesnake. And she's just frozen with fear. And then eventually Billy Bob Thornton's character is like, all right, I'll deal with this. And he gets a shovel out of the back of the truck. And then he walks up to the rattlesnake and cuts off its head. And then he cuts off the rattles to keep as a souvenir. And of course, the lawyer, fresh out of university, is like aghast and is like, well, why did you kill it? We didn't have to kill it. And he's like, well, no, I wouldn't have to kill it if you had just walked away from it. But because you just stood there doing nothing, well, yeah, I had to kill it to protect you. Anyway, that's the kind of show it is. And I enjoy those scenes very much, but I'm also aware that Taylor Sheridan, he knows what he's doing, and he's writing those scenes to appeal to a certain audience that includes people like me, i.e. sort of men in general. And I'm aware I'm being manipulated, but I'm happy to be manipulated because, yeah, it's a fun show. It's an entertaining show. Yeah, Landman with Billy Bob Thornton. Time for a podcast story, and this one comes from my favorite podcast, as I've always said, Radiolab. And what is the name of it? Revenge of the Miasma. That's the name of the podcast. So if you go to Radiolab's website, it's a very recent one called Revenge of the Miasma. I enjoyed it very much. It kind of gets into the world that I really like learning about science and biology and the history of science in particular. And one thing I've noticed, which is quite interesting, now that I've been recording a lot of these podcasts myself, is that Radiolab will make a podcast based on a book. So it's almost like different forms of media is coming down. So there's a guy, Carl Zimmer. He's an author and I think he's a columnist for the New York Times, like a science writer, Carl Zimmer, and he's written a lot of science books, like the culture and history of science, kind of popular science books. And of course, when Carl Zimmer writes and publishes a new book, he doesn't mind being interviewed by podcasters because it's publicity for his book. So the way this happens is you've got a book about miasma, and then the Radiolab takes that book and condenses it and summarizes it and makes a podcast about that book. And then I listen to the podcast and I make my own podcast about the podcast, which is about the book. If you see what I mean, it goes from book to podcast to a less professional podcast here on Planet Doug. So yeah, it just gets condensed from a book to a big podcast to a little podcast, like this Afternoon Coffee with Doug podcast, the Doug's Video Journal. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. And the book is about the history of sort of the relationship between two competing theories of what makes people sick. So if you're getting sick, what is causing the sickness? Is it the air, which is where miasma comes from, like bad air? Breathing in bad air makes you sick? Or is it germs? So it's like the historical fight between bad air theory and germ theory about what makes us sick. And that's what the book is about. And it's fascinating for me because it relates to a very important principle that seems to come into play all the time in my life. And that is the relationship between correlation and causation. And no matter what you're talking about in life, whatever you're debating with another person, correlation and causation always comes into it. And you have to figure out what you're talking about, because correlation is just the fact that two things happen at the same time. Two things occur at the same time, so they are correlated. So it looks like one of them caused the other, because one happens, then the other happens. They're correlated. But just the fact that there's correlation doesn't mean that one caused the other. So there may not be causation. So there's this fight between correlation and causation, and one often gets mixed up for the other. Two things happen, and so it's common sense. You think one of them must have caused the other one. But quite often you've got these two things that happen, but both of them were caused by a third thing. So the causation relationship between these two is an illusion, because you're not aware of the third thing that causes both of them. So this whole correlation, causation struggle comes into this story. So going all the way back to the beginning, in Carl Zimmer's book, he starts the book with the story of a scientist in the United States, like back in 1915 or something like that, a guy called Fred Meyer. And Fred Meyer was like a botanist. He studies plants, and he noticed this pile of rotting watermelons. And he brought them back to his lab, cut them open, and they were full of a black fungus. And it was a brand new fungus that affected watermelons. And no one had ever seen it before. So he started studying it, going out to farmers' fields, looking at watermelons in the field, and he was looking for this fungus. And as he studied it, he realized that this fungus was being transmitted from one watermelon to another, even though there was no physical connection between them. So the fungus apparently was traveling through the air. And this was sort of not a brand new idea. I'll talk about that in a minute. This is a very old-fashioned idea. But in 1910, it was out of fashion. This idea of disease traveling through the air had been debunked. Nobody really believed in that anymore. The modern idea was germ theory. Disease was caused by bacteria, virus, fungus, these sorts of things. And then you had to have a physical connection for it to be transferred. Things didn't go through the air. But now the evidence seemed to be that this fungus traveled through the air. So he became interested in this, Fred Meyer did, and he started doing a whole bunch of experiments with petri dishes. And he would take a petri dish, that's where you grow cultures, and he would take them up in airplanes and then put them on the end of a stick, take the cover off the petri dish, and then the plane would fly through the air. These were like very old-fashioned planes, obviously, with open cockpits. And he would just drag the petri dish, however many thousands of feet in the air, and there's nothing up there, right? It's just air. But then when he put the petri dish up there, in an airplane, in a weather balloon, in a blimp, all these different places high up in the air, and then he would take it down to earth, put the lid on it, and all kinds of stuff would start growing in the petri dish. And that proved that way up there in the atmosphere, there's all kinds of bacteria, things, living organisms floating around in the air. And then he created a new science that he called aerobiology, I think. Carl Zimmer's book, by the way, is called Airborne. That's the name of the book. And then Fred Meyer invented this field called aerobiology, and he convinced the US government to create, I think, an aerobiology department, begin studying this, and he was the founder of aerobiology. And then he went on a flight across the Pacific one time, and the plane went down. It disappeared, it crashed, and he died. The plane was never recovered, nothing was ever recovered, and he just died. He disappeared, and then the whole field of aerobiology vanished, and nobody was talking about it anymore until, of course, the pandemic, our pandemic with COVID. And then over time, of course, there was this idea that started to gain traction as the pandemic went on, that the virus was going through the air. Nobody thought it was, like at the beginning of the pandemic, it was all about washing your hands, not touching anything, sterilizing doorknobs and door handles, bringing your groceries home and then wiping it all down. It was like it was being transferred with physical contact, but then over time they realized there was also this airborne transmission possibility. And so that because of the pandemic, that's why Carl Zimmer started investigating the history of this. So after he told the story of Fred Meyer and the watermelon fungus and the petri dishes in the air, then he went all the way back in time to Hippocrates, a Greek philosopher, thinker, and I guess Hippocrates back in, 200 BC or something like that, in Greece, he came up with the idea of the miasma. And this is where the idea of correlation comes in, because Hippocrates was trying to figure out why people got sick. And he noticed that when people got sick, there was often a bad smell in the air. So miasma means bad air. So the whole idea was disease didn't come from the gods. It wasn't a supernatural punishment from the gods. He was one of the first people to argue that it was a physical thing, and you became sick by breathing in miasma, bad smelling air. And this became the prevailing medical opinion for millennia, for centuries, many, many centuries. And the reason it was such a popular theory is that it made sense, and there was a lot of correlation there. Like if you think about it, like think of some village in the 1500s in Europe or 1600s or something, and there's no sewage system where all of the garbage and the sewage and horse manure and everything just gets thrown out onto the street, and there isn't a lot of concern for cleanliness. The air, because things are rotting, smells really bad. So you're smelling this horrible smell, disgusting smell, and everybody is getting sick. So you're like, aha, bad. It's the air you're breathing that's making you sick, because they're happening at the same time. So you might have poor sewage, all the sewage is going into the streets, gets into the water supply, into the ditches, into the wells. And then of course everybody is drinking the water, and of course it's bacteria and viruses in the water that's making them sick. But back in those days, nobody knew about bacteria and viruses, so all they know is what they can smell. So you come to the conclusion that, this terrible smell is making people sick. So then they clean up the city, right? They try to get rid of the bad smell. So they take away the garbage. They try to remove the sewage, and then people don't get sick anymore. So it's like, aha, bad smell, you get sick. You get rid of the bad smell, people don't get sick anymore. So that's correlation. But what they don't realize is that it is the bacteria in the water making them sick. And the bacteria is causing the bad smell and the sickness. So that's the causation. The bacteria is causing the illness, but people aren't aware of it. So bad air, that is happening when people get sick. So one must be causing the other. And that's what people believed for a very long time. And that's where you get words like malaria, which means essentially mal, meaning bad, and area, relating to air. Bad air is what's causing. And that's because people who suffered from malaria would often be near water, and you smell like bad smells from the water. But of course, it's the mosquitoes who live in the water, who hatch in the water, and when there are a lot of mosquitoes, they transmit the disease. So again, correlation, causation. And then in the book, he goes on to talk about the Enlightenment in the 1600s, I think, that's the 1600s into the 1700s, that's the Enlightenment, where science and logic and reason, and that's when they invented microscopes. So for the first time, people saw germs, they saw bacteria and viruses, germ theory. And then now there was this argument that, aha, it's the bacteria that's causing the illness. And now we have this big fight between germ theory, all these scientists who are looking through their microscopes and they're saying, oh, there's all these creatures living in the water we didn't see before. They might be causing diseases, but all these other scientists, they don't have their own microscopes yet, so they've never seen them. And they're like, what are you talking about? That's caused by miasma, caused by bad air. And I guess this argument continued up into the 1800s. And then in the book and in the Radiolab podcast, they talk about a key moment in Hamburg, Germany, I think in, I'm going to say 1892, 1792, I think 1892 in Hamburg, there was a big cholera outbreak, like a really bad one. Thousands of people dying in horrific ways from cholera. And then the medical establishment was arguing about what to do about it. And we had the miasma people saying it's being caused by bad air. But there was another scientist who was arguing that no, it's germs in the water causing it. And they had kind of a big struggle to see who was right. And then in the end, the germ theory people, they won because they cleaned up the water supply. Like in Hamburg, they made an effort to clean up the water supply, and as soon as they did, nobody got cholera anymore. But there was actually one really interesting anecdote in there where the scientist who was in favor of miasma, he put his own life at risk, because he said, I believe it's bad air and I'll prove it to you. And he went to the germ guys and said, give me some cholera, like give me some liquid with your germs in it, and then I will drink it and I will prove that the water doesn't cause the illness. And then he did that. He actually got some cholera, like a sample from a man who was sick, took the cholera from him, put it into a test tube, and he drank it, and then he did survive. And then he said, see, it isn't, it's the air, it's not the water. But of course, then they argued afterwards, though, that, well, not everybody dies from cholera, so he happened to get lucky and he survived. But at the same time, the germ theory scientist knew what he was going to do, and they took their sample from a man who wasn't really that sick, so he didn't have a severe case, because they knew the guy was going to drink it and they didn't want him to die. So they gave him a very weak, diluted sample, and they say that's why he didn't die. But anyway, that's in a nutshell what the podcast is about. This fight, that went on for thousands of years between this idea of like what's causing diseases. Is it the air or is it germs in the water? And then we get into the modern era where air transmission is suddenly in vogue again because of the most recent pandemic, where they had proof that this did happen. And I guess during the pandemic, I think this was in the United States. I've never heard this story before, but I guess there was a choir, a singing group in the United States who were like a big case for during the pandemic. And this was at the time when everybody was talking about how you had to have physical contact to get the disease. So everybody was saying, well, as long as we wash our hands, as long as we stand far apart from each other, maintaining distance, social distancing, everything will be fine. And I guess this choir came together to practice, and they followed all of the CDC recommendations. Everything was sterilized. Everybody stayed far apart. Nobody was coughing in anybody else's faces, nothing like that. And yet, like 70% of them got sick. And it was like, how in the world did this happen? And they started experimenting and investigating and realized that no, this particular virus actually can survive in the air and float through the air on a dust particle, and then someone can breathe it in, and they can get the disease. They can be infected by the virus. So it can float through the air. So in a way, in his book, he's talking about how we've come full circle. At the beginning with Hippocrates, disease is caused by bad air, and then we discovered microscopes and germ theory, and it was like, no, disease cannot be transmitted through the air. It has to be through physical contact, through germs and bacteria. And now we've gone full circle. It's like, yeah, that is true, but there are some cases with some viruses and bacteria, they can float through the air. So it's not black and white. It's not 100% one or the other. It's sort of, we have to think about both now. So they've come full circle. And miasma is back in fashion. It doesn't cause all disease, obviously. They are caused by germs, viruses, and bacteria, but some of these can float through the air. So we cannot dismiss miasma completely. So anyway, that is the Radiolab podcast that I listened to recently that made a big impression on me. Revenge of the Miasma. And if you want to get all the facts straight, I'm sure I got a few things wrong in there. Go track it down on Radiolab and listen to it yourself. It's quite interesting. Buy the book, I guess. It must be a fascinating book. I don't have time to read books anymore, so I let Radiolab summarize the book for me, and then I talk about the summary of the book on my podcast. So yeah, that is the podcast from Radiolab. One thing that came out of listening to this podcast is it got me thinking about one of my favorite books called Microbe Hunters. It's an older book, so I'm guessing that a lot of the facts in the book are a little bit outdated now, maybe perhaps a little bit inaccurate, but Microbe Hunters is the history of the invention of the microscope, the men who polished the lenses and got them better and better and better, and the first scientists, biologists who took like water, pond water, put it on a slide and looked at it under their crude microscopes, and they were the first ones to see bacteria and viruses, germs, etc. And the book Microbe Hunters, for whatever reason, when I read, I've read a lot of science books in the past, but Microbe Hunters just stuck in my brain. I've read it several times. I come across copies all the time, and every time I find a copy somewhere, I just pick it up and I end up reading the whole book again. I guess I keep thinking that if I read it often enough, everything in the book will stay in my memory. But of course it never does, but I find reading the book very enjoyable every time. So yeah, Microbe Hunters, Planet Doug recommended. And with that, yeah, that's the end of today's podcast. I'm going to shut down now, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for hanging out with me.